Chapter 241, Secret of the Extreme Tao. Over the next few days, Qin Ying and Cao Tianyi fought several times, but each fight still ended up in a draw. The little evil king challenged the evil son almost every day. Every time they fought, the evil son would be stabbed with 1 or 2 needles. This made him very angry and sullen. He started to cultivate new secret techniques to try and deal with the little evil king. Boom! The dilapidated ruins of the Asura ancient land became clearer. Spatial ripples appeared, accompanied by a flash of multicolored light. It was evident that the Asura ancient land would soon open. From the outside staring in, one could catch brief glimpses of emperor-level artifacts and treasures inside the Asura ancient land. The fate treasures were not the only thing in there. Many experts and powerful cultivators had died there in the past, and their treasures had been buried there with them. There might even be some inheritances there. The Asura ancient land had been sealed away in space for a long time. Some treasures had become ordinary or even disappeared under the erosion of time. Similarly, there were also some treasures that had become more exquisite and precious under the polishing of time. Emperor-level artifacts could deteriorate and become ordinary artifacts, but those crafted from special materials and treasures, or those that were properly nurtured, had slowly transformed into heavenly artifacts. It was even possible for some heavenly artifacts to transform into divine artifacts. The countless experts that had fallen there, the chi and blood essence that had been spilled, were all catalysts that could nurture these artifacts and heavenly treasures. Moreover, some of these artifacts and heavenly treasures could have been infused with the aura of fate emanated by the fate treasures inside. All the major powers were here for these. Only Qin Ying and a few others could compete for the fate treasures, and most of the major powers were not able to participate in the fight for those fate treasures. However, there were other benefits and treasures they could obtain. Opportunities were always accompanied by risks. If one wanted to obtain the fate treasures, one had to bear the risk of being attacked by the other factions. Not everyone had the ability to bear it. Of course, if they encountered the fate treasure, whether they could restrain their greed or not was another matter altogether. Temptation could get the better of anyone. Ling Beiyun's expression was gloomy. For some reason, he had been feeling uneasy recently. It seemed that ever since he fell out with the Yu family, he felt that his strength had been stifled, and that he was unable to unleash his full strength. Whenever he fought with that abandoned child of the Ji family, he would rely on his higher cultivation level to suppress the other party. However, thanks to the interference of the woman who called herself a ghost, he never could press his advantage and defeat him, and would be forced to retreat each time. Every time he retreated, his strength seemed to regress, and he could no longer unleash his full strength. He knew that if he unleashed his full strength, he would not be much weaker than the evil son. The Yu family. Ling Beiyun walked out and stared coldly at Yu Beilong. Come out and fight. Yu Beilong snorted coldly and walked out, sword in hand. He was somewhat afraid of Ling Beiyun. He was known as the #1 heavens blessed in the eastern region, and was very formidable. Even though Yu Beilong had been reincarnated, he did not possess any advantage over Ling Beiyun. In fact, his opponent was even stronger than he was when he was at the same level in his previous life. Ling Beiyun had the ability to suddenly burst forth with strength during critical moments in intense battles. Thanks to that, he could suppress those at the same level as he was, and people were wary of fighting him. However, in the previous battle, for some reason, Ling Beiyun had not displayed his usual sudden burst of strength. Perhaps he was conserving his strength. A young man walked over with a wooden saber in his hand. He looked simple and honest, and did not seem like a particularly smart person. Chu Pingfan, Ling Beiyun, I'll be your opponent. As Chu Pingfan walked over, extreme saber chi began to condense. It was as if it would slash through every obstacle. Yu Beilong looked at Chu Pingfan in surprise. He was the abandoned son of the Ji family, a 16-year-old emperor realm cultivator. Ling Beiyun's face darkened and he said coldly, very well, let's fight then. Why is Pingfan here? Chu Yun frowned and looked a little anxious. Does he have a grudge with the Ling family? Ling Beiyun's cultivation was higher than Chu Pingfan's. Moreover, Ling Beiyun was not an ordinary emperor realm cultivator. To her, it would be extremely difficult for Chu Pingfan to emerge victorious against someone like him. Just as she was about to stop him, Su Shaner said, don't worry. Yu is with him, he'll be fine. Chu Yun stopped in her tracks and asked, how did he become enemies with Ling Beiyun? He Yu said, Yu Beibei of the Yu family is how should I put it? It should be Yu Beibei and Yu and Pingfan. Between the three of them. At that moment, He Yu was a little tongue-tied. She could not properly explain what the relationship between the three of them was. It was not a normal relationship. Yu Beibei used to be Ling Beiyun's fiancé, so… Chu Yun was momentarily stunned and left speechless. This nephew of hers looked silly and dull, but in the end, he had snatched someone's fiancé away. How old was he? Does Pingfan like that girl? If Chu Pingfan liked her, Chu Yun would support her nephew. I don't know if he likes her or not. Their relationship is a little messy. It's something even I don't understand. Heiyu shook her head. She really did not understand. She only felt that these young people were too playful. Chu Yun was rendered speechless once again. Down below, Chu Pingfan and Ling Beiyun had already started exchanging blows. Even though he was at a disadvantage in terms of cultivation level, Chu Pingfan's saber was still able to block Ling Beiyun's attacks. Every single saber strike seemed to contain an extreme amount of power. His aura was very special. Cao Tianyi, Mo Hongliu, and the evil sun narrowed their eyes as they watched Chu Pingfan in battle. They were secretly shocked at this young man's monstrous talent. Such a young Emperor Realm cultivator. What was even more terrifying was his cultivation technique. Is that the legendary Extreme Dao? Cao Tianyi and the other two secretly communicated with each other. It should be. Why is there someone who can cultivate the Extreme Dao in the current 9 zones? Moreover, it's such a young Emperor Realm cultivator. Cao Tianyi asked in puzzlement. I don't know. Mo Hongliu was silent for a long while before he replied. There was an Extreme Dao cultivator in the Chaos Zone, the evil sun said in a deep voice. What happened after that? Cao Tianyi and Mo Hongliu looked at him together. He disappeared after killing a Divine Realm expert. There are a lot of rumors, but I haven't heard any news about the Extreme Dao since then. It supposedly disappeared from the 9 zones. The three of them were silent. They were not ordinary Emperor Realm experts. They had seen a lot and knew more about the secrets of the 9 zones than ordinary Divine Realm cultivators. It was unknown when the Extreme Dao disappeared from the 9 zones. Even veteran Heaven Realm experts and some newly advanced Divine Realm experts were unaware of the existence of the Extreme Dao in the 9 zones. However, someone cultivating the Extreme Dao had appeared in the southern region. Moreover, in the upcoming fight for the Fate Treasures, the two of them were worried about something. Is that person really dead? Cao Tianyi looked at Mo Hongliu and asked. Hard to say, Mo Hongliu pondered for a while before replying. You're not sure either. It's said that after entering the demon zone, there was no trace of him. At that time, I had just entered the Heaven Realm. How could I know of those secrets back then? The evil sun looked puzzled and asked, who are you talking about? Chapter 242, Extreme Dao Lunatic, Kingslayer Incident. Cao Tianyi and Mo Hongliu looked at the evil sun for some time, but did not speak. The evil sun's facial expression turned dark as he said angrily, we are now allies, so shouldn't we be sharing information? The evil sun had been a Heaven Realm expert when he was expelled from the northern zone by Qin back then, and only advanced to the Divine Realm later on. He naturally did not know as much as Cao Tianyi and Mo Hongliu about the secrets of the past. When he was expelled from the northern zone, Cao Tianyi and Mo Hongliu had already been among the top Divine Realm experts. They were at least 100,000 years older than the evil sun. An Extreme Dao lunatic. Cao Tianyi made hushed sounds when he said that and did not dare to say anything further. Speak more clearly. The evil sun felt extremely depressed. It was like telling half the story and then stopping at a cliffhanger. Cao Tianyi was once a top Divine Realm expert, yet he was afraid of even talking about this matter. It was really FC King embarrassing. Mo Hongliu, you speak then. Mo Hongliu replied angrily, I won't speak. The evil sun was extremely angry, but Cao Tianyi and Mo Hongliu were both silent. The evil sun was about to curse them, when suddenly, Mo Hongliu said, it should be something that happened 500,000 years ago. The evil sun's heart jumped. It was something that happened so long ago. 500,000 years. How long could a Divine Realm cultivator live? The limit of a Heaven Realm cultivator's lifespan was less than 120,000 years, therefore a Divine Realm cultivator's lifespan should be more than 1,000,000 years, right? From this, the evil sun calculated that 500,000 years should not be too long for a Divine Realm cultivator. However, in the current 9 zones, not many people knew about things from 100,000 years ago, much less 500,000 years ago. 500,000 years ago, that was the end of that incident. To be honest, it happened 1,000,000 years ago, or even earlier. You have to know that, even during our era, there were only a few rumors about this matter. Cao Tianyi continued, The evil son became even more curious and urged, "Hurry up and say it already. What exactly happened?" Mo Hongliu spat out one word, "Kingslayer." "What?" The evil son was stunned. Cao Tianyi said, "The Kingslayer incident that shocked the 9 zones." Mo Hongliu added, "An extreme Dao lunatic killed a human king, a monster king, and a demon king." The evil son sucked in a breath of cold air when he heard that. Someone had killed 3 kings from 3 different zones. What AFC king lunatic? Moreover, the strength of each king was extremely terrifying. Someone who was able to slaughter a king, let alone 3, would be incomparably powerful. Because of this matter, that lunatic was pursued by the experts of those 3 kings' families, and many more. Moreover, the extreme Dao was forbidden within the 9 zones. Because of this matter, the human race no longer has a human king ruling over them, Cao Tianyi said in a deep voice. The monster race and demon race also no longer have kings who rule over them. It can be said that it was that lunatic who single-handedly changed the situation of the entire 9 zones, Mo Hongliu continued. The evil son understood. He recalled the news in the chaos zone back then. It was rumored that the extreme Dao cultivator had appeared and disappeared. It was very likely that he had been surrounded and killed. Why didn't I hear anything about this? It was covered up. As time passed, naturally, any information related to the incident disappeared. In my era, all that was left were a few rumors. Cao Tianyi looked at Chu Pingfan. Now, an extreme Dao cultivator has reappeared. Mo Hongliu was silent. No one knew what he was thinking. The evil son said, "Are we going to spread the news that he cultivates the extreme Dao? Do you think that there are still people who even remember the Kingslayer incident?" Cao Tianyi chuckled. The evil son did not say anything else, but he thought of many things. After the Kingslayer incident, the 3 races no longer had a king. Cao Tianyi planned to become the human king of the northern zone. Once he succeeded, not only would he be the human king of the northern zone, but he would also try to become the human king of the 9 zones. With great luck, he would break through the shackles of the divine realm and reach a higher realm. Then, he would have the strength to become as powerful as a real human king, and not just be one in name. Mo Hongliu was behind the demon race invasion. Then, did Mo Hongliu want to become the demon king of the demon race? Had he and Cao Tianyi been secretly working together back then? If the demons successfully invaded the southern region and became the first demons to invade the human race's territory, they would receive great fortune. Furthermore, whoever ascended to the throne of Demon King during this period would obtain the great luck of the demons. Thinking this, the evil son was secretly shocked. At the same time, he could not help but admire Qin Yang. He had actually devised a plan to foil Cao Tianyi and Mo Hongliu's schemes even though he had not even reached the divine realm back then. Not only did he block Cao Tianyi's path to that legendary higher realm, but he also blocked Mo Hongliu's path there as well. The evil son was secretly shocked. He had to be on guard so that he would not be tricked by these 2 people. The battle between Chu Pingfan and Ling Beiyun was already reaching its climax. Due to the gap in their cultivation levels, Chu Pingfan was ultimately weaker. At the crucial moment, he borrowed strength from Yuer to end the fight in a draw. Ling Beiyun's gaze was ice cold. Every time he was about to win, a new wave of power would inexplicably surge forth from his opponent. A sinister and terrifying power. That ghost race girl. Every time he wanted to unleash his full strength, for some unknown reason, he could not. It seemed like he was restricted. In the small courtyard, Chu Zan watched the battle between Chu Pingfan and Ling Beiyun. Due to the difference in cultivation level, Chu Pingfan was always at a disadvantage. Yuer did not attack directly. She only used her strength to support Chu Pingfan. That was why they were evenly matched. Even so, Ling Beiyun, the son of the fate of the eastern region, was unable to suppress an enemy whose cultivation level was lower than his. It was equivalent to a defeat. Chu Zan waved his hand and took this opportunity to seize a portion of the fate of the eastern region and transferred it to Chu Pingfan. Sooner or later, the position of the son of the fate of the eastern region would belong to Chu Pingfan. After the battle ended, Chu Pingfan ignored Shen Yuanfeng and the others and went over to the small hill where Ding Yu and the others were. As the days passed, Chu Pingfan challenged Ling Beiyun once every few days. Ling Beiyun was very sullen and became more and more irritable. Cao Tianyi saw this and did not plan to intervene. He had always had some inexplicable fear of the extreme Dao. In this era of the fight for the Fate treasures, the reappearance of the extreme Dao was a sign. The reappearance of the extreme Dao, is it due to the Kingslayer? Cao Tianyi and Mo Hongliu secretly discussed. It's hard to say. Mo Hongliu was also extremely fearful. In the current 9 zones, there were not many people who knew about the Kingslayer incident. Those veteran Divine Realm experts and the human king's families were definitely aware, though. The encirclement and killing of extreme Dao cultivators back then were mostly done by the experts of the human king's families. However, the Kingslayer incident had happened a long time ago. Now that there was no one in the 9 zones who remembered it, who would deliberately target Chu Pingfan. The current human king's families would only try to rope him in and not kill him directly. I'm afraid I won't have the chance to become the human king. Cao Tianyi sighed. Mo Hongliu was silent. He had been away from the demon zone for too long. How much influence did he have left? Moreover, he was now a human-demon hybrid. He no longer had high hopes of becoming the demon king. At the very least, I have to get 2 fate treasures. Only then will I have a chance to enter the desolate ancient zone. Mo Hongliu said in a low voice, it doesn't matter if we become kings or not. We have to focus on increasing our strength. Now that the Divine Realm experts are leaving the desolate ancient zone, I'm worried that something has happened to the 9 zones. Cao Tianyi nodded and agreed with Mo Hongliu's conjecture. Chapter 243. The Heavenly Dao Plan is really good. Qin Ying's plan had ruined Cao Tianyi's plan, and the battle for the fate treasures had been postponed until now. Taking the position of human king now was but an extravagant hope. Therefore, the goal of Cao Tianyi and Mo Hongliu was to obtain the fate treasures and enter that mysterious place in the desolate ancient zone. There, they would break through the shackles of their previous lives and reach that legendary higher realm. They thought that with their divine realm bodies backing them up, they would easily be able to obtain the fate treasures. However, thanks to Chu Zan, they were now forced to fight with their Emperor Realm reincarnated bodies. It was now hard to predict who would win the battle for the fate treasures. Moreover, there were actually Divine Realm experts who left the desolate ancient zone and returned to the 8 zones. This unsettled Cao Tianyi and Mo Hongliu's hearts. With their sharp instincts as former top Divine Realm experts, they sensed that something big was going to happen in the 9 zones. Therefore, they had to increase their strength as soon as possible, fuse with their original bodies, and recover to their peak strength, or even surpass the Divine Realm. In front of the Asura ancient land, other than the frequent battles between Chu Pingfan and Ling Beiyun, no one else made a move. Even Qin Ying and Cao Tianyi restrained themselves. The real battle would take place inside the Asura ancient land. As the number of battles between Chu Pingfan and Ling Beiyun increased, Chu Pingfan was able to rely on Yuer to gradually gain the upper hand. Cao Tianyi and Mo Hongliu soon realized that something was wrong with Ling Beiyun. It seemed that his fate was weakening. The Tao of fate was too mysterious. Still, the 2 of them were once Divine Realm experts, and their senses were sharper than everyone present. They had even come into contact with fate treasures before. The extreme Tao can steal the fate of others. Mo Hongliu was extremely shocked. Cao Tianyi was also shocked. Could it be that the Kingslayer is trying to steal his fate? The 2 of them did not know that Chu Zan was behind the decline of Ling Beiyun's fate. They instead mistakenly came to the conclusion that the extreme Tao could steal another's fate. All of a sudden, all kinds of speculations about the Kingslayer incident flashed through their minds. Boom! Spatial ripples appeared again, and the Asura ancient land's outline became even clearer. Now, they could see some traces of the battle back then. Chu Pingfan no longer challenged Ling Beiyun. Instead, he made preparations to enter the Asura ancient land. Everyone stared at it, wondering what kind of great battle had happened inside. Many Heaven Realm experts had fallen back then. Chu Zan observed the laws of heaven and earth of the southern region, waiting for the best opportunity to replace a portion of the laws of heaven and earth with the heavenly Dao laws in the heavenly Dao talisman. This would be a crucial step in the completion of the heavenly Dao talisman plan. Once this step was completed, he could slowly subsume those laws and replace them with his own. Once that was done, he would be able to expand this into the laws of heaven and earth of the northern zone. Chu Zan was very excited. If his plan succeeded, he would become the controller of the heavenly Dao laws within the northern zone. Even a Divine Realm expert would not be able to escape the heavenly Dao laws. In addition, as soon as a Dao Realm expert approached the northern zone, he would immediately sense their presence. Furthermore, as the heavenly Dao's laws continued to rise, even Dao Realm experts wouldn't be able to escape the restrictions and would be under the control of the heavenly Dao. Furthermore, if the heavenly Dao talisman plan succeeded, the northern zone's cultivators would cultivate the heavenly Dao laws and comprehend them. This would make the heavenly Dao laws even more perfect and powerful. As for Chuzan, the creator of the heavenly Tao laws, he would also obtain great benefits. Chuzan had already planned that after the heavenly Tao laws replaced the laws of heaven and earth in the northern zone, he would change the benchmark of the 100-year Emperor realm and the 1000-year Supreme realm. He would make it easier for cultivators to cultivate to speed up the perfection of the heavenly Tao laws. The stronger the living beings under the heavenly Tao laws were, the stronger the heavenly Tao laws would be. There might even be a day when the heavenly Tao laws he created would be on par with the great Tao. This meant that the living beings under the heavenly Tao laws would always comprehend the heavenly Tao and not the great Tao. Those who could transcend the heavenly Tao laws and comprehend the great Tao were definitely freaks. Such freaks were extremely rare, though. Chuzan was extremely excited when he thought about the benefits he would gain if he succeeded in implementing this daring plan. The heavenly Tao talisman plan was really good. Chuzan thought of another question. If he succeeded, and the entire 9 zones were under the heavenly Tao laws, would that make him, the master of the heavenly Tao laws, another kind of Taoyuan realm expert? The heavenly Tao laws were created by himself, and also belonged to him. Although he did not open his own path on the great Tao, he created the heavenly Tao laws, which might someday be on par with the great Tao. This was also a type of Tao path. The difference was that he did not open a Tao path on his own. Instead, he created a Tao path by subsuming and replacing the laws of heaven and earth of the 9 zones. However, why had no other Tao realm experts tried this? Chuzan frowned. He did not think that other Tao realm experts would be indifferent to the possibility of creating a Tao path in this manner. Perhaps it was because they could not, or maybe they did not know how to. There was also a possibility that Tao realm experts, having surpassed the laws of heaven and earth, disdained them. Moreover, they did not possess Chuzan's system. Rumble. The spatial seal holding the Asura ancient land back began to tremble once again. The entire southern region began to tremble with it. The southern region's ley lines spewed out spiritual energy. Some desolate areas began to burst forth with vigorous vitality, as the level of spiritual energy was increasing. Cultivation would now be easier, and some spiritual herbs were changing rapidly. The desolate mountains of the southern region were now verdant and green. There were spiritual herbs growing there, although they were just buds. In time, this would definitely become a spiritual land. The recovery of the laws of heaven and earth and the ley lines brought with it about the recovery of the fate of the southern region and the outpouring of spiritual energy within the southern region. After the recovery of the laws of heaven and earth of the southern region, the laws of heaven and earth of the entire northern zone would also become complete, and the entire northern zone would undergo a transformation as well. Compared to other zones, the northern zone was relatively barren, and the spiritual energy there was relatively thin. This was related to the lack of fate within the southern region and the incomplete laws of heaven and earth. Now that the laws were starting to recover, the laws within the entire northern zone would also strengthen. Some heavenly treasures that were undergoing transformation would also complete the transformation. Cultivators who were at a bottleneck would be more likely to break through as well. The divine realm and heaven realm experts outside the Asura ancient land all sensed the changes happening. Chapter 244. Exploring the Asura ancient land. Many heaven realm experts of the northern zone were surprised to find that the restoration of the southern region's laws of heaven and earth had brought about such a great change. It increased the density of spiritual energy within the entire northern zone. In time, the northern zone would no longer be lacking compared to the other zones. Luoming and the other divine realm experts thought about what was happening at the desolate ancient zone. Could the two be related to this? Although the southern region was only a remote region within the 9 zones, the fact that the laws of heaven and earth here were incomplete did not just affect the southern region. It also had an impact on the northern zone. Logically speaking, it should not have any impact on the 9 zones. However, with the changes happening in the desolate ancient zone, they were no longer sure about this. The laws of heaven and earth in the 9 zones were intertwined, so if the laws of the southern region were incomplete, this meant that there was a small gap loophole in the laws of the 9 zones. Had these changes affected the desolate ancient zone? The spatial seal around the Asura ancient land shook more and more frequently. The huge and dilapidated battlefield became clearer and clearer. The frequency of the appearance of the multicolored light also increased. Moreover, there were some traces of the auras of the supreme treasures. Chuzan was paying attention to the changes in the laws of heaven and earth of the southern region, while also examining the situation around the Asura ancient land. What existed inside the Asura ancient land? Was it a dangerous place that posed a threat to Emperor realm cultivators? He activated the heaven-spying mirror and looked into the Asura ancient land. In the image projection, the Asura ancient land was in ruins. The mountains were shattered and the rivers were dry. The air was filled with a rotten stench. Chuzan continued to investigate. Suddenly, a blood-red lake appeared, which appeared to be boiling. As he continued to look around, he saw a corpse, some broken emperor-level artifacts, and a muddle-headed remnant soul that had lost its consciousness. The Great War back then had been too intense. Many Heaven Realm experts had fallen. In the Asura ancient land back then, there had been no restrictions. Everything was destroyed during that battle. Another blood lake appeared in the image projection. Chuzan frowned. Why was there another blood lake? Rivers of blood had flowed that year during the Great War from all the death and destruction, but why had the blood not dried up? It was the blood of the cultivators, which contained a terrifying amount of chi and blood essence. Even heretic cultivators who practiced evil techniques would not be able to use this blood. However, it was suitable for the spirit-devouring flower to consume. Chuzan continued to investigate the area. Suddenly, a figure appeared in the image projection. It was a broken corpse. It was walking like a puppet, and its hollow eyes were glowing with scarlet light. It had been corroded by the evil energy of the battlefield, and had already mutated. It was the corpse of a demon. Perhaps its soul had not been completely destroyed yet, but it could not bear the corrosion of the evil energy. Therefore, its broken body had already mutated. However, it was not strong enough to pose a threat to an Emperor Realm cultivator. When this demon had been alive, it too was merely an Emperor Realm cultivator. Chuzan continued looking around. The Asura ancient land was very large, so he could not examine every detail thoroughly. He could only give the entire place a once-over. After checking things out, Chuzan discovered 7 blood lakes. All of them were boiling with terrifying chi and blood essence. He did not know why, but when he saw these blood lakes, Chuzan had a feeling that something would happen to these blood lakes. Throughout the history of the 9 zones there had been countless battles. There were probably many battlefields that had been sealed away into space like this that contained such blood lakes, right? Chuzan decided to allow the spirit-devouring flower to consume the blood lakes. It would nourish the spirit-devouring flower. Boom! Half a month later, the spatial seal rippled again, as the entire southern region underwent even more changes. Moreover, many half-step Emperor Realm cultivators could sense the bottleneck hindering them from breaking through loosening. This was a sign that the laws of heaven and earth were close to fully recovering. A few days later, the multicolored light appeared again in the southern region, and it lasted for more than an hour. At this moment, those half-step Emperor Realm cultivators started to break through. In front of the Asura ancient land, all of the Emperor Realm experts who were here to fight for the fate treasures retreated to avoid being caught in the spatial fluctuations. The Divine Realm and Heaven Realm experts who were thousands of miles away also retreated at Ren Chenghe's request. They had to stay thousands of miles away from the participants. Everyone in the Chu family's territory was looking at the multicolored light. Not long after, Chu Tianming issued an order. Everyone in the Chu family was to seize the opportunity to cultivate and raise their cultivation levels as soon as possible. The southern region was about to change. In the great Qin royal palace, Qin Qian looked in the direction of the Asura ancient land and felt her heart clench. She was worried about Qin Ying's safety. She even thought of seeing Chuzan. However, at this critical moment, she needed to stay in the great Qin dynasty and deal with any possible dangers. Chuzan stood in the courtyard and looked in the same direction, while keeping an eye on the changes in the laws of heaven and earth. The heavenly Tao talisman was floating in front of him, and the heavenly Tao laws were ready to merge with the laws of heaven and earth at any time. Chuzan was waiting for the best opportunity. The heavenly Tao talisman plan had reached the most critical moment, and Chuzan could not afford to miss his chance. He had to seize the best opportunity. Chu-er, my lord. Chu-er stood respectfully in front of him. If there are any changes in the great Qin dynasty, make them disappear. Yes, my lord. Chu-er disappeared from where he had been standing. In order to avoid any unforeseen circumstances, Chuzan made preparations in advance. The heavenly Tao talisman plan had to be carried out silently. Without any experts noticing, the southern region's laws of heaven and earth would be slowly replaced by the heavenly Tao laws. Next would be the northern zone, followed by the entire 9 zones. At that point, even if it was not on par with the great Tao, it would definitely allow him to fight Daoyuan realm experts. Rumble. The Asura ancient land's spatial seal continued shaking. After another half a month, a half-step Emperor Realm cultivator finally broke through to the Emperor Realm. Of course, even if they broke through, they still kept a low profile. A first-level Emperor Realm cultivator was just a piece of trash compared to the current experts in the current southern region. The Asura ancient land might contain countless opportunities. However, it had nothing to do with this new Emperor-level cultivator. Only death awaited there. Chuzan continued to wait for the right opportunity. At this moment, 108 heavenly Tao seals were floating around him. Each seal represented a heavenly Tao law. 3 days later, the spatial seal continued to tremble. Soon after, the horns of the ancient battlefield emerged from the spatial seal and crashed into a small mountain. At the same time, multicolored light appeared. The sky was covered with criss-crossing multicolored light, and one could vaguely see some of the gaps between the criss-crossing lights being patched. Chapter 245, Opening of the Asura Ancient Land. Amidst the dense multicolored light, the laws of heaven and earth were faintly discernible. The broken gaps were rapidly being patched. Those who could see these faintly discernible laws of heaven and earth were at least heaven realm experts. Weaker ones would only see the criss-crossing multicolored lights. The divine realm experts raised their heads. Given their comprehension of the laws of heaven and earth, they could naturally see it more clearly. However, they only caught a brief glimpse before it was covered by the multicolored lights. Chuzan quietly waited. The final moment before the laws recovered would be the best opportunity. Finally, the opportunity came. The Tao aura around his body surged, and the power his Tao principles surrounded him. The will of the great Tao appeared. He raised his hand and pointed. The heavenly Tao talisman seals that circled around him instantly rushed into the laws of heaven and earth that were about to recover under the influence of the will of the great Tao. The seals dissolved, and were enveloped by the dense multicolored lights. It was covered by the will of the great Tao, so no one was able to see the seals. Shua, the laws formed by the heavenly Tao talisman seal instantly filled in the gap that was about to be patched. They fused with the laws of heaven and earth, and were like a drop of ink that dripped into water. The heavenly Tao talisman in front of Chuzan trembled as the power within it circulated. Rumble, the fusion of the heavenly Tao laws caused the laws of heaven and earth, which were currently recovering, to pause for an instant. The multicolored light flickered for a moment. This momentary abnormality did not attract anyone's attention. Dense Tao aura accumulated within Chuzan's hand as he held the heavenly Tao talisman. At the same time, the fate-suppressing Tao cauldron appeared, suppressing the fate of the southern region and linking it with the heavenly Tao talisman. After a corner of the Asura ancient land appeared, it paused for a moment before shaking, as if something had happened. Qin Ying and the others were still waiting. In their eyes, the shaking of the Asura ancient land was caused by the spatial fluctuations. Even Cao Tianyi thought so. Even the divine realm experts did not notice anything amiss. Chuzan continuously manipulated the heavenly Tao talisman, using it to comb through the laws of heaven and earth. He searched for laws similar to the ones within the heavenly Tao talisman and used those to replace the original laws. Even though he had already reached the second level of the Tao realm, he still felt pressured. The will of the great Tao seemed to have detected something, and certain laws were repulsed. Chuzan did not dare to forcefully suppress it. Otherwise, it would cause a huge disturbance, and easily expose his actions. He raised his hand and made a grabbing gesture. The Origin Tao crystal appeared in his hand. It was filled with the aura of the great Tao, which now covered the heavenly Tao talisman. At the same time, it connected to the great Tao transmitted waves of the aura of the great Tao. Using the Origin Tao crystal as a medium, the heavenly Tao laws continuously surged into the laws of heaven and earth. It used the aura of the great Tao to conceal the heavenly Tao laws and complete the replacement of some of the laws of heaven and earth. The multicolored light continued to flicker, but there were no other signs of disorder. In an orderly manner, the gaps in the laws were patched up, though some of these laws had been replaced with the heavenly Tao laws. The first and most crucial step had been completed. Chuzan heaved a sigh of relief, but he still did not dare to be careless. He continued to comb through the laws of heaven and earth, devouring and replacing similar laws with his own. He was about to succeed. Chuzan waited for the moment when the heavenly Tao laws were activated. He was waiting for the system's reward. He had replaced part of the laws of heaven and earth with his own. This should be an achievement worthy of a generous system reward. It would take some time for the 108 initial heavenly Tao laws to be completely integrated into the laws of heaven and earth. It could be as short as 3 days, or as long as 10 days to half a month. Chuzan could only keep an eye on them, not relaxing for even a moment. The laws of heaven and earth were constantly being patched up. If there were Tao realm experts present, they would notice that some of the laws seemed different. However, there was no other Tao realm expert in the southern region other than Chuzan. Therefore, it was destined that no one would know. The laws of the southern region were already quietly changing. They were being replaced. In front of the Asura ancient land, everyone had solemn expressions on their faces as they waited for the opportunity to enter. Qin Ying and Cao Tianyi were both preparing for a big battle. They both had a contingency plan for the Asura ancient land. It would depend on whose contingency plan was better and who could seize the fate treasures. Apart from Ding Yu and a few others, the other Emperor realm experts were targeting the treasures and minor fate treasures. They had no intention of fighting for the 5 regions' fate treasures. Although those fate treasures were important, they had to be alive to enjoy them. There was no way Qin Ying or Cao Tianyi's sides would allow them to take advantage of them. Boom! Parts of the Asura ancient land continued to materialize, flattening a few small mountains. The spatial seal continued to shake, and a rotten stench appeared. There was a faint baleful aura lingering within the battlefield, and the spiritual energy in the region started turning violent. If those below the Emperor realm were here, they would no longer be able to absorb this spiritual energy. Qin Ying and the others, who had experienced the Great War back then, had unusually gloomy and angry expressions. Cao Tianyi, on the other hand, had a calm expression. In that battle, regardless of whether it was the human race or the demon race, many experts had died. In the end, the entire battlefield was sealed away in space. Chuzan continued to operate the Heavenly Tao Talisman. Half of the 108 Heavenly Tao laws had already been fused into the laws of heaven and earth. The entire process was very smooth. Only a tiny gap in the southern region's laws of heaven and earth had not been patched up. Rumble. 3 days later, the multicolored lights in the sky over the southern region disappeared, and the spatial seal finally gave way and disappeared. The ancient battlefield finally made its reappearance in the southern region. The moment it did, a fierce aura swept out like waves. Qin Ying and the others' expressions were normal. That fierce aura had been accumulating for a long time on the battlefield. The instant the Asura ancient land returned to the southern region, the 108 Heavenly Tao laws had finally fused into the laws of the southern region. At this moment, Chuzan controlled a portion of the southern region's laws. Heavenly Tao Enlightenment. Chuzan extended his hand and tapped on the Heavenly Tao Talisman. His Tao Aura soared, and the 108 Heavenly Tao laws instantly replaced the dominant position of the southern region's laws of heaven and earth. The Heavenly Tao laws became the main laws, and the original laws of heaven and earth acted as a supplement. Chapter 246, Heaven-Splitting Brush. The Heavenly Tao Talisman was activated. Chuzan's consciousness used the Heavenly Tao Talisman to overlook the entire southern region. It was as if all living beings in the southern region were under his control. They were all governed by the Heavenly Tao laws. The baleful aura of the Asura ancient land continued to surge out. With a thought, Chuzan's Heavenly Tao laws descended, transforming the baleful aura into gentle spiritual energy. At this moment, Chuzan realized how powerful the master of the Heavenly Tao laws was. With a single thought, he could change everything. Even life and death could be decided with a single thought. Of course, he was not able to do this yet. After all, he had only replaced a portion of the laws of the southern region. Although the Heavenly Tao laws had occupied the dominant position, the laws of heaven and earth were too vast. He had not fully incorporated the entire laws of the heavens and earth. Only when this was done would Chuzan be able to truly have control over all living things in the southern region. Chuzan waved his hand and the Origin Tao crystal returned to the pocket dimension together with the Heavenly Tao Talisman. The laws of the pocket dimension were already close to perfection. They were directly connected to the Great Tao. Chuzan had a plan, and the pocket dimension had a very important role to play in it. However, he needed to continuously upgrade the pocket dimension in order to implement this plan. At the same time, he also had to replace the laws of heaven and earth in the 9 zones with the Heavenly Tao laws. At this moment, this plan had only taken its first step. You have not left seclusion, but have replaced a portion of the southern region's laws of heaven and earth with the Heavenly Tao laws. You have been rewarded with the Heaven-Splitting Brush. The long-awaited system reward had finally arrived. However, the treasure that was rewarded was beyond Chuzan's expectations. Heaven-Splitting Brush. He could not help but think of the Earth Creation Scripture. Could it be that the Heaven-Splitting Brush and the Earth Creation Scripture were a pair? Heaven-Splitting and Earth Creation. He examined the reward. Heaven-Splitting Brush draws out the heavens with a brush. It can draw the laws in all living things. It can open the heavens from nothingness and from primal chaos. Paired with the earth creation scripture, it can create a world and the living things within it. Chu Zan's eyes widened. The heaven-splitting brush and earth creation scripture were indeed extremely powerful treasures. It could create the world and the living beings within it. This was simply a treasure of creation. Chu Zan's heart beat rapidly. With these two treasures, he could become the ruler of a world. This would allow him to carry out a certain part of his plan even more perfectly. Chu Zan looked at the pocket dimension and resisted the urge to create the world inside the pocket dimension. The heaven-splitting brush was powerful, but with his current cultivation base, he probably could not create a world at will, much less create the living things within it. Chu Zan estimated that he had to at least reach the Daoyuan realm before he could do this. At most, he could create a small world without living beings at the moment. However, such a small world was useless to him. Chu Zan also noticed that the description mentioned that the heaven-splitting brush could open up the heavens from nothingness and primal chaos. Where was the primal chaos? Beyond the Great Tao was the primal chaos. Was the primal chaos inside the Great Tao as well? Chu Zan felt that his understanding of the Great Tao was still lacking. Perhaps even Daoyuan realm experts like Hong Yuanchu lacked this knowledge. Did Huang Long and Gui Ran, who were creatures of the Great Tao, know about what was inside and beyond the Great Tao? Was the Great Tao finite? Chu Zan was filled with curiosity and the desire to explore all of this. However, to explore the Great Tao, one had to reach the Daoyuan realm. Therefore, he had to cultivate hard and break through the 36 levels of the Tao realm as soon as possible. The first step of the Heavenly Tao Talisman plan had been successfully implemented. When he had completely replaced the southern region's laws of heaven and earth with the Heavenly Tao laws, another system reward would probably be triggered. Chu Zan turned his gaze to the Asura ancient land. The ancient southern region's fate treasure would be a catalyst. With this, he would be able to speed up the replacement process. If he obtained the other 4 regions' fate treasures, he would also be able to use them as a catalyst for the encroachment of the Heavenly Tao laws in those regions. Hence, the fate treasures was very crucial. Currently, other than his own disciples, only Cao Tianyi, Mo Hongliu, and Feng Shaoqing were posed a threat. Xiezi was being targeted by the little evil king, so he did not have much of a chance at obtaining the treasure. Cao Tianyi and Qin Ying each had their own trump cards, so it was hard to say who would win. Ding Yu was the southern region's son of fate, so he had an advantage. Wang Luo and Xiao Liang were the same. Chu Pingfan now possessed half of the eastern region's fate as well. Cao Tianyi's advantage was still there though. He was the son of fate of the central region, and he had a trump card. Ignoring the question of whether he would be able to obtain all of the fate treasures, he definitely had a high chance of obtaining the central region's fate treasure. After Xiao Liang's fate transformed, he was not only the son of the fate of the western region, but also the son of fate of the northern zone. In that sense, he had an advantage over the others. Ding Yu was also the holy child of the earth spirits. Yu carried with her the fate of the ghost race. Chu Zan concluded that the chances of the disciples obtaining the fate treasures were very high. The supreme fate treasures had to be his. In front of the Asura ancient land, the surging baleful aura suddenly turned into gentle spiritual energy, which stunned everyone present. The laws of the southern region had been restored, which caused the baleful aura to be neutralized. For some reason, Cao Tianyi and the others felt that something was not right. When had the laws of heaven and earth ever been like this, acting as if it was a living thing? Was it because the laws had just reawakened? Still, they did not dwell on this matter for long. The Asura ancient land was open, and the fight for the fate treasures had officially begun. The human king position was no longer viable for Cao Tianyi and Mo Hongliu, but they wanted to obtain the fate treasures and open that place in the desolate ancient zone and recover their strength as soon as possible, or even advance a step further. Boom! Cao Tianyi and Mo Hongliu moved, and their figures flashed as they flew toward the Asura ancient land. Qin Ying waved his halberd and tried to stop them. Humph! Cao Tianyi sneered and said, Qin Ying, let's see who will emerge victorious on the battlefield. As you wish. Qin Ying held his halberd and charged into the Asura ancient land with Xin Yuanfeng and the other brothers. The little evil king left a trail of afterimages in his wake and immediately searched for the evil son. Evil son, with me present, you can forget about getting any treasures. The evil son's face was gloomy. The other Emperor Realm experts from the Heavenly Saint sect wanted to stop the little evil king, but they were stopped in their tracks by the Emperor Realm experts of Nine Swords Mountain and the Kashan Alliance. Chapter 247, Entering the Asura Ancient Land. Let's head in as well. Ding Yu led the group as they headed into the Asura ancient land. On the other side, Feng Xiaoqing glanced at Ding Yu and the others and chuckled. He then unhurriedly headed in as well. Rumble. The first to start fighting within the Asura ancient land was the little evil king and the evil son. They fought endlessly the whole way in. The evil son was furious. He truly regretted not torturing the little evil king to death. Qin Ying, Cao Tianyi, and the others headed toward the depths of the Asura ancient land. The other Emperor realm cultivators who entered the Asura ancient land scattered in all directions to look for opportunities. For the time being, no other fights broke out. Among them, a few Emperor realm cultivators, whether intentionally or not, secretly followed Qin Ying and the others. As soon as Ding Yu entered, he said, "Should we move together or separately?" "Let's move separately. Our chances will be higher that way," He Yu said. With their strength, there were very few people who could trouble them. Even Wang Luo, who was slightly weaker, could handle Cao Tianyi and Mo Hongliu. Shang Xing was actually the strongest because of his Heaven Realm soul puppet. Even though it could only fight for short periods of time, it was enough to crush any Emperor Realm cultivators. Such a powerful puppet had never appeared at this level. The structures, restrictions, and formations involved were very complicated. Shang Xing had relied on the large amount of resources in the pocket dimension to forge it. Among Ding Yu's group, Chu Yun was the weakest. Even so, she was still stronger than most Emperor Realm experts. Ding Yu and the others were not worried about her safety. Chu Yun was carrying the heavenly spirit cat in her arms, which had reached the divine realm. The cat was the strongest creature currently present in the Asura ancient land. Who could threaten Chu Yun's safety? Next was Chu Pingfan. His cultivation level was lower, which made him slightly weaker. However, he and Yuer were inseparable, so he was not afraid of any Emperor Realm expert. Chu Pingfan also had a trump card to protect himself. Alright, then let's split up. Ding Yu and the others agreed to split up. He Yu turned back to glance at Feng Xiaoqing and said, "Be careful of that Feng family member. He's not simple. It's fine as long as he isn't an enemy. Even if he is, who cares? Descendant of a human king or not, just kill him." Ding Yu said indifferently. His body turned into a streak of light and flew away. He Yu, Wang Luo and the others also headed in the same direction. Su Shaner originally wanted to mess with the Su family, but this was not the right opportunity, so she gave up on this matter for now. She held a long whip in her hand and looked at Chu Yun. "Do you want to follow me or go alone?" Chu Yun rubbed the cat's head and said, "I'll be fine alone. I'll just take a look around." Su Shaner stretched out her hand and rubbed the cat's head. Her figure flashed and she flew away. Chu Yun held the cat and slowly walked into the depths of the Asura ancient land. Boom! The sound of a battle could be heard from afar. Suddenly, a streak of light flew over. A dazzling white light that looked like a flower appeared in front of her. An Emperor-level fate treasure. Chu Yun stretched out her hand and grabbed it. Her face was filled with joy. This Emperor-level fate Emperor treasure could be used to strengthen the Chu family's foundation. Put the treasure down. Suddenly, a few Emperor Realm cultivators surrounded her and attacked. All of them had reached the 9th level of the Emperor Realm. "Since the treasure has chosen me, then it's mine. You guys can go find another treasure." Chu Yun directly stored the treasure into her storage pouch. "You're courting death." These few Emperor Realm cultivators were wearing the same clothes and clearly belonged to the same force. "I really don't want to kill you guys. Don't seek your own death," Chu Yun said coldly. "You piece of trash. Eldest senior brother, kill her." An Emperor Realm cultivator made his move. However, as soon as he made his move, he saw cat claws cover the sky. Slap slap slap. The countless cat claws slapped those people around. "Little White, stop playing around." Bang! The few of them who were being slapped back and forth by the cat claws instantly exploded, turning into a cloud of blood mist. Chu Yun turned around to look. Feng Xiaoqing hurriedly cupped his hands together and revealed a kind smile as he led the group in another direction. That was too terrifying. What kind of cat was that? It had reached the Heaven Realm at least, right? Did they not say that those above the Emperor Realm were not allowed to participate? What was going on? Feng Xiaoqing had countless questions in his heart. Inside the small courtyard, Chu Zan was sitting on a chair as he brewed a pot of tea. He drank it leisurely and watched what was going on in the Asura ancient land through the heaven spying mirror. Chu Yun brought the heavenly spirit cat in with her. Were those above the Emperor Realm not allowed to participate? Well, that did not include his own people. The Asura ancient land was very lively. With the appearance of the treasures, fights broke out continuously. Some people obtained fortunes, while others obtained inheritances. There were also people who died at the hands of mutated corpses. Qin Ying, Cao Tianyi, and the others continued to head deeper into the Asura ancient land, heading straight for the location of the Fate treasures. They all had prepared contingency plans so that they could sense the location of the Fate treasures. Behind them, there were people following them from a distance. These were all people who wanted to take advantage of the situation. Chu Zan saw two groups of people fighting next to a blood lake. One of them was from the Great Evil Palace. They were trying to devour the chi and blood essence of the blood lake. However, their bodies were corroded and their souls were in chaos. They attacked recklessly and lost their minds. Chu Zan raised his hand and grabbed the spirit-devouring flower. Go! He threw the spirit-devouring flower and it flew toward the Asura ancient land. Up until now, the spirit-devouring flower had yet to break through to the divine realm. After devouring the blood lakes in the Asura ancient land, the spirit-devouring flower should have no problem breaking through to the divine realm. The fight for the Fate treasures was not something that would conclude in 1 or 2 days. Qin Ying and Cao Tianyi quickly rushed toward the location of the Fate treasures. Ding Yu patted the spirit of the earth vein, and asked it to find the location of the Fate treasures. Wang Luo, Shang Xing, Xiao Liang, and He Yu all had their own methods. Along the way, they also collected other treasures. Xiao Liang was attacked by the cultivators of the western region, including warriors of the Xiao family. Apparently, the Xiao family was still trying to eliminate him. Wang Luo was also attacked by the cultivators of the Wang family. Shang Xing was wearing a set of armor that covered his entire body. When he encountered someone who fought with him for treasures, he did not even bother dodging. Even when struck by emperor-level weapons and artifacts, he was not injured at all. He Yu calmly strolled through the Asura ancient land. Nothing fazed her, and she did not even bat an eye when she killed people. As someone who cultivated the heavenly Tao scripture, she was extremely powerful. No one who fought her could withstand more than 3 moves. Su Shaner was not here to look for treasures. She came here specifically to mess with the Su family. She held a whip and looked everywhere for the Emperor Realm cultivators of the Su family. When she found one, she whipped one. When she saw 2, she whipped 2. Chapter 248, Ice and Fire Dual Whip Technique. Chu Pingfan and Ling Beiyun clashed. They had encountered each other not long after they entered the Asura ancient land. With Yuer's help, Chu Pingfan did not lose out. The two of them explored as they fought. Eventually, they encountered a muddle-headed remnant soul. It roared and attacked. At this moment, Yuer appeared. The bell in her hand shook, directly suppressing the remnant soul. Moreover, her ghost spiritual power coiled around it. She stretched out her hand and pointed, transforming the remnant soul into a ghost. It was now a new member of the ghost race. Moreover, it lost all of its memories of its previous life. In any case, it had died in battle. Its consciousness had long disappeared, leaving only a muddle-headed remnant soul behind. In the Asura ancient land, there were many such remnant souls left behind by the cultivators and experts who had died here. Under the influence of the baleful aura, they had lost their minds and mindlessly attacked people. When Ling Beiyun saw this, he decided to retreat. He actually did not continue to fight them. He was afraid. When he saw this scene, Chu Zan knew that Ling Beiyun would no longer be the fated son of the eastern region. Chu Pingfan would replace him. Chu Zan took out the good luck charm and injected his Fate Tao principle into it. He waved his hand to speed up the transfer of fate. In a corner of the Asura ancient land, Su Xuan had forced back 2 Emperor Realm experts and was trying to snatch an Emperor-level fate treasure. His eyes were burning with passion. As long as he successfully obtained this fate treasure, this trip would be considered a success. Last time, because they wanted to interfere with Su Shaner's fate, the Su family's fate treasure was destroyed, causing the elders of the Su family to become uneasy. As long as he obtained this fate treasure, the Su family's fate would continue to be safeguarded. If Cao Tianyi succeeded in the end, then the Su family would rise even higher. Hula! Suddenly, a snow-white whip lashed out fiercely. Su Xuanhei's expression changed, and he hurriedly made a move to defend. At the same time, he turned around. He was instantly filled with rage. Su Shaner, it's you. What are you doing? Trying to cause destruction. Su Shaner snorted coldly and said, Su Xuan, you didn't expect this, right? Shua, she lashed out with the whip again. Su Xuanhei's expression changed greatly. How could Su Shaner be so strong? He was no match for her. From those 2 attacks, he was able to determine that she was stronger than he was. In fact, Su Shaner did not seem to be weaker than Cao Tianyi. How could this be possible? You're still dodging. Things will end faster if you obediently let me whip you a few times, but if you continue to dodge, then, HMPH. Su Shaner lashed out again and again. Everywhere the whip landed, the ground would be frozen. Even Su Xuanhei's emperor domain had turned into an icy domain. No matter what, I'm still your brother. Su Xuan was furious. A few lashes. Not to mention a few lashes, even if he was hit by a whip once or twice, he would probably die. Since when have you treated me as your sister? Su Shaner refused to let him go. I'm really not the one at fault here. Su Xuan denied it. Then, he continued, that's an emperor-level fate treasure. It's a big deal. You're also a member of the Su family. If you bring it back to the Su family, the elders will definitely reward you and will break the marriage engagement. You'll also obtain great authority within the Su family. He did not want to be whipped. Given Su Shaner's current strength, if she returned to the Su family, there was no way the elders would not treat her well. Bah, I'm no longer a member of the Su family. Su Shaner coldly snorted, if you continue to resist, you'll be whipped even more. You can't beat me. If you obediently let me whip you a few times, I won't stop you from taking the treasure. Otherwise, I'll take it away. As she spoke, she raised her left hand and said, I'll count to 3. You should make your decision quickly. 1, 2, Su Xuanhei's expression changed drastically. Now, he could only gamble on the fact that Su Shaner would not kill him. After all, he was her brother. She would not go so far as to whip him to death, right? He gritted his teeth, closed his eyes, and said, whip me. Pa. As soon as he finished speaking, a whip ruthlessly lashed onto his body. An ice-cold force surged into his body, as if trying to freeze his body and soul. Su Xuanhei's entire body trembled, and his teeth chattered. His body was covered in ice shards. However, he heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. Su Shaner had indeed shown mercy and did not kill him. Pa. Another lash struck him. This time, it was not ice-cold, but warm instead. Aside from the pain, the heat actually dissolved the ice-cold power in his body. Su Xuan heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. It was true that he had been whipped a few times, but he could still withstand it. He had not suffered any serious injuries. Pa. Su Shaner's lashings became more and more practice. One lash after another landed on Su Xuanhei's body. Gradually, she gained some insights, and the strength of the lashings changed. Pa. Su Xuan was shivering from the cold, but he did not panic. The next lash would warm him up. In the end, the next lash struck his body, but instead of being warm, it was hot. Like a flame, it surged into his body, as if trying to burn him into ashes. Not good. Su Xuanhei's expression changed. What was going on? Pa. After a few lashes, half of Su Xuanhei's body was frozen, while the other half of his body was red, as if he was on fire. What happened to it just being a few lashes? Why was it endless? Su Xuan wanted to open his mouth and beg for mercy, but his entire body was trembling, and though his mouth was moving, he was unable to speak. His soul was also alternating between cold and hot at the same time, and he felt as if his entire body was about to explode. Su Shaner's lashes became more and more practice and, finally, when the next few lashes landed on Su Xuanhei's body, the cold and hot were intertwined, entering his body together. Su Xuan could not hold on any longer and fell to the ground with a plop. Half of his body was frozen by the ice crystals, while the other half of his body was burning with raging flames. Su Shaner stopped. If she continued, Su Xuan would definitely die. In any case, he had managed to hold on. Su Xuan was extremely excited. Although he suffered, the emperor-level fate treasure was saved. In the end, he saw Su Shaner holding the treasure in her hand. She waved it at him and said, I'll be taking this thing with me. You didn't keep your word. Su Xuan was so angry that he was trembling. I'm just a little girl, why would I keep my word? The Su family doesn't have any credibility to speak of anyway. I learned this from them. Su Shaner snorted and turned around to leave, completely ignoring Su Xuanhei's anger. Your maidservant, Su Shaner, whipped a heaven's blessed and created the ice and fire dual whip technique. You have been rewarded with the ice and fire Dao principles. Chu Zan had been using the heavenly Dao talisman to replace more of the southern region's laws of heaven and earth when the system's reward suddenly arrived. He was pleasantly surprised. Su Shaner had triggered a system reward. She had whipped a heaven's blessed and created the ice and fire dual whip technique. She was quite capable. The heavens blessed that was whipped was probably that Su Xuan from the Su family, right? Chu Zan immediately received the reward. The Ice and Fire Dao principles added another 2 Dao principles to his arsenal. When the Ice and Fire Dao principles appeared, Chu Zan incorporated them into the chaotic energy and fused them together with the other Dao principles. Chapter 249. They each had their own methods. Chu Zan took out the heaven spying mirror and checked on the current situation inside the Asura ancient land. In the image projection, there were battles everywhere. Some remnant souls in the Asura ancient land had also started to become active. Chu Zan saw that Yuer and Chu Pingfan were transforming remnant souls into the ghosts, and even refining some of them into pure soul power. Not bad, not bad. The ghost race was going to grow stronger again. There were plenty of remnant souls in the Asura ancient land. At this rate, Yuer would soon have an army of the ghosts. Chu Zan then checked on Ding Yu and the others. They were all heading toward the depths of the Asura ancient land. Wang Luo kept on fighting with the Emperor realm experts of the Wang family. Even though he was besieged, he was easily fending them off. The Wang family was in despair. Xiao Liang was the same. He swept the Emperor realm experts of the Xiao family away with his long spear. Later on, the experts hired by the Xiao family all backed out and did not dare to attack him again. He was too terrifying. There were so many of them, yet they were the ones being injured. In addition, he would not kill them, only injuring them each time. It was no different from being tortured. No one could withstand it. Not to mention the experts hired by the Xiao family, even their own family experts were terrified. They could not withstand this kind of torture. They wanted to retreat, but Xiao Liang would not let them. He gathered them together and beat them up several times a day without allowing their wounds to heal. They were being toyed with all day. The people of the Wang family were also very miserable. Wang Luo used some strange medicinal pills with strange effects on them. Every time he had a new idea, he would use the array formation and restriction pills to trap them, and then refine these new pills and use them as his guinea pigs. Some people's divine souls turned green and floated out of their heads without dissipating for a long time. Some people could not stop farting. The spiritual power in their bodies gushed like farts and could not be stopped. The experts who were surrounding Wang Luo were all frightened and begged for mercy. Chu Zan tapped on the heaven spying mirror, and the image projection changed targets to Qin Ying, Cao Tianyi, and the others. Cao Tianyi and Mo Hongliu were silent and kept moving forward. Qin Ying and his 7 brothers were also silent and moving forward. Finally, a dilapidated hall appeared in the distance. This was the location of the cross-zone teleportation array formation of the southern region and the central battlefield of the Great War back there. Qin Ying's gaze was ice-cold. He raised his halberd and looked coldly at Cao Tianyi, saying, "Scoundrel Cao, if you have any trump cards, feel free to use them now." Cao Tianyi laughed lightly and said, "Qin Ying, you should have stopped me from coming here. I know that you also have your own trump cards, but do you think that your trump cards can be compared to mine?" Cao Tianyi was full of confidence. Qin Ying looked at Mo Hongliu and said coldly, "Back then, you had already colluded with the demon race. Did you reach some kind of agreement?" Now, the situation was clear. Mo Hongliu and Cao Tianyi were in cahoots. When the demon race invaded back then, both sides must have reached a tacit understanding to obtain certain benefits from the Great War. That was all in the past. Is it important? Cao Tianyi smiled and said, "Back then, there was indeed a divine realm expert who died. We killed him." Qin Ying's gaze suddenly became sharp. "A human? Why must it be a human?" Mo Hongliu opened his mouth and said, "It was neither a human nor a demon. It was just a divine realm expert from a small race that was just a little special." Qin Ying's heart sank. The fact that they called it special meant that it had to be related to the fate treasures. A small race related to fate. The Earth Spirit race. Qin Ying, I, Cao Tianyi, actually admire you. However, your cultivation and your horizons are limited. I, Cao Tianyi, am a bona fide divine realm expert. You schemed against me once, and foiled my plan. That can be considered your achievement. However, the fate treasures will ultimately be mine. It doesn't matter if I don't get the position of human king. My old body will fuse with my current body, and I'll break through again. Your reliance on the human king's family means nothing to me." Cao Tianyi calmly spoke. He was not the slightest bit anxious. "I, Qin Ying, have many enemies, and many geniuses have died at my hands. However, the one I despise the most, and the one I look down on the most, is you, Cao Tianyi. So what if you're a divine realm expert? You sacrifice the lives of fellow humans in an attempt to break through the bottleneck. No matter how strong you are or how high your cultivation level is, in my eyes, you're nothing but trash. Qin Ying's eyes were filled with disdain. Haha, the great Qin Emperor is indeed arrogant. No wonder you dared to scheme against me. Cao Tianyi's gaze became cold and severe. The aura of a divine soul spread out, and he pulled out a talisman seal. The divine blood will guide me. Fate will be mine. Cao Tianyi clenched his hands and, with a rumble, the floor inside the dilapidated hall shook and cracked. Mo Hongliu's figure flashed, and he stood between Qin Ying and Cao Tianyi. 5 drops of fist-sized, pale golden blood emerged from the ground. The blood was covered by a layer of dense white light. Divine blood. Qin Ying's gaze focused. He could sense a special aura from the divine blood. Once the divine blood appeared, there was a sudden flash of multicolored light. A total of 5 rays of light suddenly flew over and rushed toward the 5 drops of divine blood. Big brother, Pang Xinghai and the others attacked. Qin Ying was not anxious at all. Pooh, the 5 rays of light entered the 5 drops of divine blood. Cao Tianyi sneered and waved his hand. The divine blood flew towards him. Mo Hongliu's aura erupted. Now that Cao Tianyi had obtained the fate treasures, he only needed to block Qin Ying and the others for a moment. Once the divine blood fell into Cao Tianyi's hands, they could easily escape. The corners of Qin Ying's mouth curled up slightly. Return. Qin Ying let out a soft cry. The divine blood that was originally flying towards Cao Tianyi suddenly stopped. Following that, the multicolored lights actually leaked out the divine blood drops as they tried to carry the divine blood toward Qin Ying. Cao Tianyi's expression changed. He looked at Qin Ying in surprise. What kind of contingency plan had he prepared that could actually overcome the divine blood and attract the fate treasures? Get over here. Cao Tianyi's body shone with golden light. Mysterious runes surrounded his body, and a powerful suction force acted on the divine blood. HMPH. Qin Ying snorted coldly. The image of a bracelet appeared above his head and suppressed the divine blood. The fate treasures also appeared from within the divine blood drops. They actually wanted to abandon the divine blood drops and return to Qin Ying's side. Dao weapon imprint. Qin Ying's contingency plan was to leave a wisp of the aura of a Dao weapon on the fate treasures. The Dao weapon had been reincarnated with Qin Ying, and it was one with his soul. The Dao weapon imprint allowed him to influence the fate treasures. Of course, the fate treasures had their own unique qualities. Even if he had the Dao weapon imprints, he could not completely control the fate treasures. That would require him to become the master of the fate treasures. However, as long as he obtained the fate treasures, he would be able to refine them slowly. Chapter 250, Intense Battle. Cao Tianyi's expression turned incredibly dark. He had thought that with the divine blood as a catalyst, he had a 100% chance of winning. However, Qin Ying had come prepared. It seemed that he had some special method that allowed him to leave an imprint on the fate treasures. Now that they were stuck in a stalemate, the one who would get the treasure in the end would be the one who was stronger. Great Qin Emperor. Cao Tianyi opened his mouth and said sneeringly, or should I call you little girl instead? He wanted to provoke Qin Ying and cause him to lose focus. After all, Qin Ying hated the fact that he had been reincarnated as a woman. As long as he lost focus, even slightly, his control of the mysterious imprint would weaken. Then, Cao Tianyi would be able to snatch the fate treasures in an instant. However, Qin Ying's expression was calm, without a trace of anger. He even looked at Cao Tianyi mockingly. How could Qin Ying lose his composure so easily? Boom! Mo Hongliu suddenly attacked. His half-moon blade swept toward Qin Ying, trying to interrupt the fight for the fate treasures. One sword technique. Dazzling sword chi tore through the air. Xin Yuanfang's sword intent surged as his attack stabbed toward Mo Hongliu's half-moon blade. He had been accumulating strength. The moment Mo Hongliu attacked, he also struck using 9 Swords Mountain's ultimate technique. Galaxy. Pang Xinghai also attacked. Surging starlight power swept out like ocean waves. Flower dance. Dazzling flowers bloomed all around Hua Qianzi's body, one after another, enveloping her and Qin Ying inside to defend them. Peng Qiguang, Yu Beilong, and Bai Xiaokong also attacked. Boom! They joined forces and instantly dispersed Mo Hongliu's attack. Then, Pang Xinghai, Peng Qiguang, Yu Beilong, and Bai Xiaokong charged toward Mo Hongliu. After using the one-sword technique, Xin Yuanfang retreated in order to recover the spiritual power he consumed. Hua Qianzi protected Qin Ying and Xin Yuanfang. Black light bloomed around Mo Hongliu's body. It was time to decide the victor. With the fate treasures in front of them, neither side could back down. The powerful strength of the reincarnation of the demon race Divine Realm Elder was displayed at this moment. Black light condensed in his hand, and it was as if darkness had descended. It enveloped Pang Xinghai and the other three and kept pressing forward. Cao Tianyi's body emitted golden light as he hurled punch after punch as he strode forward. Hua Qianzi blocked the attacks, but in just 3 punches, a huge hole had appeared in her wall of flowers. Qin Ying wielded his halberd and, with a domineering strike, defeated Cao Tianyi's attack. Scoundrel Cao, let's decide the victor today. Qin Ying attacked Cao Tianyi. As for the fate treasures, it was still wrapped inside the divine blood. The two of them split their attention and fought while fighting for the ownership of the fate treasures. Not far away, a few figures were hiding. They were the martial artists who had followed them and wanted to reap the benefits. Xin Yuanfang recovered his energy and held his sword in his hand, constantly accumulating strength. He stared at Cao Tianyi, waiting for an opportunity to use the one-sword technique. Hua Qianzi joined the attack on Mo Hongliu. 5 top-notch Emperor Realm experts had surrounded Mo Hongliu, but they were still unable to gain the upper hand. From this, it could be seen how powerful Mo Hongliu was. Boom! Suddenly, Mo Hongliu punched towards the rear. Pang Xinghai and the others did the same. If they wanted to reap the benefits, they had to be strong enough. **T. The expressions of those Emperor Realm cultivators changed drastically. It was too late for them to escape. Boom! They were instantly killed. On the other side, the battle between Qin Ying and Cao Tianyi had become more and more intense. They had even relaxed their control over the fate treasures. Mo Hongliu snorted coldly. His soul power spread out, and a wisp of divine power descended. At this moment, he used one of his trump cards. A wisp of divine power wrapped itself around his weapon as his eyes emitted killing intent. A mirror appeared in front of Pang Xinghai. There was a galaxy reflected on the mirror's surface. He spat out a few mouthfuls of blood essence and infused them into the mirror. Starlight power bloomed like a river, enveloping him. He had also used his trump card. How could the former sect master of the Star Ocean sect not have any trump cards prepared? Bai Xiaokong's battle intent enveloped his body. An illusory figure appeared within his battle intent, which seemed to exude a faint divine aura. That illusory figure was a wisp of the former sect master's aura, a divine realm expert. Peng Qiguang's expression was ferocious. With a roar, a strange image of a demon beast appeared behind him. Its scarlet eyes were filled with bloodlust. A wisp of sword chi flew out from between Yu Beilong's brows. Hua Qianzi held a purple flower in her hand. Petals fluttered as purple light gradually filled the air. The moment Mo Hongliu used his trump card, Pang Xinghai and the others also instantly activated their trump cards. Boom! The sky rumbled and dust billowed. Mo Hongliu vomited blood and was sent flying. His body was covered in wounds, and the black light around his body was pulsing erratically. His hair was disheveled, and his expression was gloomy and cold. Pang Xinghai and the others also vomited blood and suffered serious injuries. Both sides had used their trump cards and were actually evenly matched. Mo Hongliu was a reincarnated divine realm expert after all, so the trump card he possessed was naturally better. However, the 5 of them had worked together to block it. On the other side, Qin Ying and Cao Tianyi were also fighting intensely. Qin Ying's tyrant dragon body was pushed to its limits, and his body was wrapped in a layer of scales. His clothes were already torn in several places. If not for the scale armor, the snow-white skin below would probably be exposed. Boom! Qin Ying's halberd struck repeatedly, pushing Cao Tianyi back. Cao Tian suddenly hurled the golden hammer in his hand. A wisp of divine aura spread out. He was going to use his trump card. However, Qin Ying was no different. The aura of a Dao weapon also filled the air. Boom! The moment the two sides collided, a sword strike suddenly made its appearance. One sword technique. Xin Yuanfeng took the opportunity to attack. Even his body seemed to have turned into a sharp sword at that moment. TCH. The sword chi penetrated the golden light around Cao Tianyi's body. Xin Yuanfeng then appeared in front of him and pierced his shoulder. If Cao Tianyi had not dodged at the very last moment, this sword strike would have pierced into his chest. He was wounded. Get lost! Cao Tianyi roared angrily. A faint shadow of his divine soul appeared above his head. With a roar, he blasted Xin Yuanfeng away. Xin Yuanfeng vomited blood as his body flew backward. He fell to the ground and remained motionless. Then, Qin Ying's halberd came crashing down, covered in indomitable power. Cao Tianyi's eyes were filled with killing intent as he charged toward the halberd with his chest. The golden hammer emitted boundless power. The halberd pierced through Cao Tianyi's chest, but Qin Ying did not show any joy on his face. He ignored the blinding golden light as a layer of white light bloomed around his body. With a roar, he raised the halberd and slammed it toward a spot just next to him. Chapter 251, Intense Competition. The layer white light washed away the golden light that was sweeping over. A Luo family secret technique. Cao Tianyi's figure suddenly appeared where the halberd had struck. Cao Tianyi, who had been pierced through the chest by the halberd, turned into a puppet and shattered on the ground. Substitution secret technique. Cao Tianyi had intended to use the substitution secret technique to block Qin Ying's fatal attack and then use a soul attack to disrupt Qin Ying and delay his reaction time. In the end, things did not turn out as he hoped. Qin Ying actually saw through his trick. Let's just fight then. I want to experience the skills of a descendant of the Luo family. Cao Tianyi gave up on controlling the divine blood drops. As long as he could defeat Qin Ying, the divine blood would naturally belong to him, along with the fate treasures. Boom! The battle became even more intense. This time, it was a life or death battle. At this moment, a figure rushed over and tried to grab the 5 drops of divine blood. Zhu Yuanbai. Qin Ying also unleashed his full strength at this moment to stop Cao Tianyi from interfering. How dare you! Cao Tianyi was furious. He roared and his divine aura shook above his head. Boom! Zhu Yuanbai suddenly bled from his 7 orifices and staggered backward. Soul attack. At this moment, Cao Tianyi had used a wisp of his soul power to attack Zhu Yuanbai. Even though he had reincarnated, his divine soul was still not an ordinary emperor-level divine soul, so there was no way Zhu Yuanbai could withstand it. Zhu Yuanbai looked miserable, but he still staggered toward the fate treasures. He mumbled, "Cousin, don't worry. I'll help you get the fate treasures." Cao Tianyi's soul attack technique erupted again. Qin Ying's expression changed. He could rely on the human king's Dao weapon to protect his soul, but he could not stop Cao Tianyi's soul attack from targeting Zhu Yuanbai. Retreat quickly. Zhu Yuanbai could not withstand it. If he did not retreat, his soul would be severely injured. His soul might even be destroyed, leaving behind only his physical body. At this moment, a streak of light flew over, which then transformed into a human figure that rushed towards the divine blood. Cao Tianyi's soul attack instantly shifted targets and attacked the newcomer. Boom! A huge mountain in the shape of a sword appeared in front of Ding Yu that withstood Cao Tianyi's soul attack. He cultivated the 100 tempering divine technique and the immovable mountain technique. His soul defense was extremely strong. Even if Cao Tianyi's soul was extraordinary, an attack like that could not hurt him. He raised his hand to grab a drop of divine blood. Within that drop of divine blood was a sword. How dare you! Cao Tianyi was furious, and Qin Ying frowned. A third party had intervened. Not far away, Mo Hongliu rushed over, wanting to stop him. Pang Xinghai and the others also rushed over. Another 2 figures rushed over. Xiao Liang and He Yu each grabbed a drop of divine blood. Cao Tianyi and Qin Ying also stopped. The fate treasures instantly escaped from the divine blood. However, He Yu waved her hand, and wisps of law power spread out. In an instant, she grabbed a fate treasure. Heavenly Dao scripture. Xiao Liang's slow vine burst forth, and the fate treasure slowed down enough for him to grab it. Ding Yu's fate shone like a rainbow, and his status as the southern region's fated son was revealed at this moment. That sword happened to be the southern region's fate treasure. It shook for a moment and actually took the initiative to approach Ding Yu. Haha, it is indeed fated with me. Ding Yu took the treasure in his hand. Put it down. Mo Hongliu's eyes were red. How could he let someone take advantage of him? Cao Tianyi's eyes were scarlet red. Golden light blossomed around his body. A divine soul emitting golden light appeared behind him. This was the aura of his divine soul from his previous life, which he kept as a trump card. At this moment, he revealed it. You all deserve to die. Qin Ying waved his halberd, and a Dao weapon appeared above his head in an attempt to block Cao Tianyi. To him, as long as the fate treasures did not fall into Cao Tianyi's hands, he would be able to accept it. Moreover, the 3 of them gave him a special feeling. It seemed like they were from the same sect. Boom! Cao Tianyi's soul technique erupted, and dazzling golden light shot toward Ding Yu. Qin Ying's Dao weapon glowed, but it was too late. He could only block a portion of the attack. Cao Tianyi's soul attack, powered by the aura of his divine soul from his previous life, was not something an Emperor Realm expert could withstand. Ding Yu did not panic at all. He too had a trump card. He, Ding Yu, was someone who wanted to kill gods. My sword can kill a god without a woman in my mind. With the divine sword in hand, destructive sword intent condensed. Following Ding Yu's roar, he stabbed the sword with the intent. The intent of killing a god. Hey Yu, there was something wrong with first brother's brain. Boom, Ding Yu's sword penetrated the golden light. Then, the sword intent turned into a torrent of sword chi and swept toward Cao Tianyi. He Yu was already facing off against Mo Hongliu. Heavenly Dao laws. With a raise of her hand, law power appeared. It was as if she controlled life and death. All of Mo Hongliu's attacks dissipated into nothingness. Mo Hongliu was shocked. What kind of terrifying cultivation technique was this? Who were these three people? They were too terrifying, completely surpassing the heavens blessed of the Emperor realm. Another person flew over. Feng Xiaoqing. There were only 2 fate treasures left. Cao Tianyi staggered back 2 steps, his soul shaking. He was shocked by Ding Yu's sword strike. Qin Ying seized the opportunity. His halberd struck Cao Tianyi's body. The golden light around his body was destroyed. Cao Tianyi spat out blood and retreated. Rumble. The divine blood separated from the fate treasures. Mo Hongliu wanted to fight for it, but he was blocked by He Yu. Fate treasures, I want a share too. Feng Xiaoqing smiled. He walked over step by step, and scarlet flames surged out from his body. A huge flaming phoenix appeared behind Feng Xiaoqing. He moved faster and faster, heading toward one of the fate treasures. A long whip lashed out, heading toward a fate treasure. Hula, the flaming phoenix arrived, and Feng Xiaoqing made his move. He shook off the long whip, and flew faster and faster. He went straight for the fate treasure. Pa, the whip contained the power of ice, and tried to freeze the flaming phoenix. I'll block him. Xiao Liang's spear blocked Feng Xiaoqing. Su Shan'er's figure fluttered as she brandished her whip. She chuckled, little fate treasure, come to me. That fate treasure was instantly snatched away by Su Shan'er. Cao Tianyi roared, but Qin Ying firmly blocked him. Mo Hongliu was being blocked by He Yu. Even when he used his trump card, he was still unable to shake Black Moon. He was furious. He secretly hated that mysterious expert for not allowing him to use his divine realm body. Otherwise, how would things have ended up like this? Currently, there was only one fate treasure left. Feng Xiaoqing fought with Xiao Liang as he said in a deep voice, do you have to hoard them all? One isn't too much to ask, right? If we have the ability, why can't we take them all? Xiao Liang laughed coldly. Since that's the case, don't blame me. A fiery red bead appeared in Feng Xiaoqing's hand. An intense aura appeared. The bead emitted strength that was comparable to the peak of the heaven realm. Chapter 252, Tainted Blood. The expressions of Xiao Liang and the others changed slightly. It was a secret treasure comparable to the peak of the heaven realm. Although Cao Tianyi and the others kept on using their trump cards, due to the limitations of their cultivation levels, the power they unleashed did not reach the heaven realm. However, Feng Xiaoqing had actually used such a secret treasure. As expected of a descendant of a human king's family, he had many treasures. Such a powerful secret treasure was rare, and probably no one in the entire 9 zones knew how to refine one. Feng Xiaoqing held the fiery red bead in his hand and said coldly, move aside, I only need one fate treasure. This secret treasure was extremely valuable. Once it was used, it would consume a huge amount of energy. Moreover, there was a limit to the number of times it could be used. Currently, there were only 3 chances left to use it. Unless it was absolutely necessary, Feng Xiaoqing did not want to use it. Xiao Liang was not the slightest bit afraid. Anger flashed across Feng Xiaoqing's face. He was about to activate the fiery red bead. At this moment, a gust of cold wind blew past. The sound of ghosts wailing could be heard, which could actually affect one's soul. It made one feel terror. Hula, Chu Pingfan and Yuer had brought the ghost race's army over. From a distance, Yuer tossed out the bell in her hand. When it rang, sinister ghost energy suddenly burst forth. Xiao Liang retreated. He Yu retreated. Ding Yu retreated as well. Feng Xiaoqing activated the fiery red bead, and scarlet flames appeared. A huge flaming phoenix blotted out the sky that seemed like it would burn everything. However, the moment the flaming phoenix appeared, something restricted it. With a wail, it disappeared into nothingness. A crack appeared on the fiery red bead. Feng Xiaoqing. What was going on? Why had his secret treasure failed? Feng Xiaoqing was stunned. While he was in a daze, the last fate treasure was snatched away by Chu Pingfan. Chu Zan looked at the 5 fate treasures. All of them were obtained by his disciples. This trip to the Asura ancient land could be considered to have come to a successful conclusion. As for the battle between Qin Ying and Cao Tianyi, he did not care much about it. Looking at the dumbfounded Feng Xiaoqing, Chu Zan laughed. He had already said that those above the emperor realm were not allowed to interfere, so extending that rule to a secret treasure was no big deal. So what if Feng Xiaoqin was from a human king's family? He would not give the latter an exception. Chu Zan had simply used the heavenly Tao laws to eliminate the flaming phoenix summoned by Feng Xiaoqing's secret treasure. Being the master of the heavenly Tao felt too great. The battle for the fate treasures had come to an end. Wang Luo and Shangxing had also rushed over. When the two of them saw that the fate treasures were gone, but there were 5 drops of divine blood, they were instantly overjoyed. Wang Luo used restriction pills to seal the divine blood, while Shangxing used his furnace to seal the divine blood. The two of them actually wanted to work together to refine the divine blood. This almost drove Cao Tianyi and Mo Hongliu mad. Do you really think that the treasures belong to you? Cao Tianyi roared angrily. When he met up with Mo Hongliu, Qin Ying was also forced to retreat and regroup with Pang Xinghai and the others. The warriors of the Feng family also rushed over. They gathered behind Feng Xiaoqing, their faces gloomy. The biggest beneficiaries were undoubtedly Ding Yu and the others. They were in cahoots. There were 4 groups present. Cao Tianyi and Mo Hongliu's group, Qin Ying and his brother's group, Feng Xiaoqing's group, and Ding Yu's group. Wang Luo and Shangxing were excitedly refining the divine blood there and then, trying to fuse the 5 drops of divine blood into 1 drop. They completely ignored the angry gazes of Cao Tianyi and Feng Xiaoqing. You want to keep the treasures for yourself? That's possible. Hand over 1. Cao Tianyi looked angrily at Ding Yu and the others. Ding Yu yawned and replied lazily, if you want 1, come and get it. To him, Cao Tianyi looked like he deserved a beating. If that's the case, then don't even think about even getting 1. Cao Tianyi roared angrily. Golden light surged out of his body, and black light appeared around Mo Hongliu's body. Then, the golden light and black light fused together. Rumble. The ground cracked open, and dark, black blood that gave off a rotten stench suddenly gushed out. The black blood filled the surroundings, and a strange aura was gradually condensing. The fate treasures were shaking, as if they felt threatened. Tainted blood. Feng Xiaoqing's expression changed. Cao Tianyi, are you crazy? What is tainted blood? Ding Yu frowned. He did not know what it was, but his intuition told him that this tainted blood was definitely not a good thing. His domain power surged forth, trying to stop the spread of the blood. He Yu's expression changed. Tainted blood, oh no. What is that? Xiao Liang and the others looked at her curiously. Haha, as expected of a descendant of a human king's family. He actually knows about the tainted blood. Cao Tianyi laughed maniacally. He coldly glanced at Qin Ying, Ding Yu, and the others. If I, Cao Tianyi, can't get those treasures, no one can. Qin Ying, do you think you can beat me? Haha, I, Cao Tianyi, will never lose. As the tainted blood spread out, everyone sensed a strange aura. Let's go. Xiao Liang's expression changed. It's too late. As soon as the tainted blood appeared, it locked onto the fate treasures. It can't be avoided, He Yu said with an unsightly expression. You still haven't told us what the tainted blood is. Ding Yu said gloomily. Rumor has it that the blood originated from a dangerous place in the desolate ancient zone. It has the strange power to taint fate. Some say that it was formed from the blood essence of countless fallen divine realm experts. Supposedly those countless divine realm experts were unwilling to die and, thus, their blood essence carries resentment and anger toward fate, which is how the strange power appeared, He Yu said in a low voice. She had read about this in an ancient book. She had never thought that tainted blood really existed. Moreover, it was now being used by someone as a contingency. Haha, so what if you know what it is? Now that the tainted blood has been activated, the fate treasures will be destroyed. No one can obtain them. Cao Tianyi said with a ferocious expression. Scoundrel Cao, what a vicious trick. Qin Ying said with a gloomy face. This was something he had never expected. Looking at Ding Yu and the others, he said, if you trust me, leave the fate treasures to me for the time being. I might be able to protect the fate treasures. He wanted to rely on the human king's Tao weapon to resist the corrosive effect of the tainted blood on the fate treasures. It's not about whether we trust you or not. We have our own ways, Ding Yu replied. Then, he sent a voice transmission to Xiao Liang and the others, Master can deal with this tainted blood, right? As the tainted blood continued spreading, the fate treasure in his hand was already starting to corrode. Sir can definitely deal with it, Su Shaner said, however, there shouldn't be a need to trouble Sir. I think the spirit-devouring flower should be able to devour the tainted blood. Chapter 253. The conclusion of the battle for the fate treasures. After she mentioned the spirit-devouring flower, Ding Yu's group glanced at a strange plant in the distance. Perhaps it was better to call it a colorful flower. It was flickering with a dazzling brilliance. It seemed very excited, and moved its roots like legs as it quickly ran over. Under the shocked gazes of Cao Tianyi and the others, the spirit-devouring flower grew larger and larger. Its petals opened up and its roots spread all over the ground. One of its roots appeared in front of Feng Xiaoqing and, with a smack, sent him flying. The spirit-devouring flower's petals swayed, and it even let out humming sounds, clearly pleased. It then emitted suction force, absorbing all of the tainted blood. After that, it looked intoxicated, as if it had eaten some sort of delicacy. The aura of the tainted blood gathered toward the spirit-devouring flower, no longer affecting the fate treasures. Cao Tianyi and Mo Hongliu were stunned. Qin Ying, Feng Xiaoqing, and the others were also stunned. What kind of strange plant was this? Why could it absorb the tainted blood? That was forbidden blood from the desolate ancient zone. Even divine realm experts had to avoid being contaminated by it, yet this strange plant in front of them could actually absorb it. Cao Tianyi immediately glanced at Qin Ying. Seeing the shock on his face, he knew that this was not something that the latter had prepared. The roots of the spirit-devouring flower then snaked over and slapped Cao Tianyi and Mo Hongliu away. No one knew if it was intentional, but the direction Cao Tianyi flew in happened to be toward Qin Ying. This was a rare opportunity. Qin Ying immediately grasped this opportunity. With a roar, he threw his halberd. At this critical moment, Cao Tianyi swung his golden hammer. Boom! Cao Tianyi was sent flying backwards. His chest caved in, and blood spurted out wildly. His injuries were not light. B-starred Cao, die! Qin Ying chased after him. With a flash of black light, Mo Hongliu grabbed Cao Tianyi and quickly fled. Qin Ying, Luo family, just you wait, Cao Tianyi, will definitely take revenge. Cao Tianyi's resentful roar could be heard in the distance. The thing he hated the most in his heart was naturally that mysterious existence who interfered. However, that person was too terrifying, and he did not dare to openly threaten him at all. He knew that he would probably never be able to take revenge on that person in his entire life. Cao Tianyi and Mo Hongliu fled. Ding Yu and the others also left with the fate treasures, while Feng Xiaoqing also left in a sorry state. Qin Ying and his brothers were all heavily injured. Especially Xin Yuanfeng, who had suffered the heaviest injuries. The enmity that had lasted for hundreds of years had temporarily come to an end. However, neither side had benefited from the plans that they had set up. Still, Qin Ying's side did come out on top, though they did not obtain a single fate treasure. Big brother, Pang Xinghai could not help but speak up. The fate treasures aren't important anymore. Let's head back to the great Qin dynasty to recover. As long as scoundrel Cao isn't dead, the feud between us isn't over, Qin Ying spoke in a deep voice. He knew very well that this time, things had worked out thanks to his master's promise. Otherwise, even if he relied on the Luo family's power, he would not have been able to succeed. In fact, he might even have died. Cao Tianyi's strength had exceeded his expectations. His divine realm body was stronger than the Luo family's ancestor, Luo Ming. From this, it was clear how powerful Cao Tianyi was at his peak in his previous life. Thinking back to his original plan, Qin Ying sighed. His luck had been good back then, and he had acted quickly enough. Otherwise, how could he have foiled Cao Tianyi's evil scheme? Thinking back carefully, when he extracted the 5 regions' fates and condensed them into fate treasures, Cao Tianyi should have stopped him. However, why didn't he come out to stop it? Thinking back to that fallen divine realm expert, Qin Ying concluded that Cao Tianyi had to have been entangled by that divine realm expert. This was probably why his original plan had succeeded. The battle for the Asura ancient land's fate treasures had finally come to an end. Of course, the exploration of the Asura ancient land continued. After all, the scale of the Great War back then meant that there were still many treasures and inheritances left inside. All of this had nothing to do with Qin Ying and the others, nor did it have anything to do with Ding Yu and the others. On the other side of the Asura ancient land, a great battle was still going on. It was the battle between the little evil king and the evil son. The evil son was feeling very aggrieved. He was being held back by the little evil king. This guy was a madman. He felt that the little evil king's mind was not quite right. Occasionally, he exhibited some traits of being neither a man nor a woman. Outside the Asura ancient land, There was a rumbling sound. Cao Tianyi and Mo Hongliu's bodies suddenly burst forth with light and shot into the sky, disappearing into the horizon. A voice could be heard from afar, "Well done Qin, Luo family. I have learned my lesson." The voice was filled with hatred. Luo Ming frowned. Cao Tianyi seemed to have lost. He had already escaped, so he was likely preparing to recover his strength. The Luo family had to be prepared. At least one of his uncles had to come back. After Cao Tianyi and Mo Hongliu left, the experts from the Great Qian Palace and the Heavenly Saint sect also left. Those who stood on Cao Tianyi's side had gloomy expressions. They could only think about how to get through the next hurdle. Nine Swords Mountain and the other powers did not attack immediately. Their main enemies were Cao Tianyi and the Great Qian Palace. The other powers that stood on their side were not important. Of course, Qin Ying had to decide how to punish them afterward. Qin Ying had won the final victory. Qin Ying had won the battle of fate. Would he rise up again and unify the southern region? Or perhaps even the northern zone? Given Qin Ying's current influence, it was only a matter of time before he unified the northern zone. Was the northern zone to welcome its first human king? Nine Swords Mountain and the other factions were excited. However, when they thought about how Qin Ying had turned into a woman, they felt helpless. This was too king ridiculous. Was the Nine Zones' first female king going to appear? In the small courtyard, Chu Zan deactivated the heaven spying mirror. There was no need to continue watching. Once Cao Tianyi was defeated and fled, it was over. With the fate treasures in hand, the speed at which the heavenly Dao laws would cover the northern zone would increase. As for the grudge between Cao Tianyi and Qin Ying, that would naturally be left for Qin Ying to settle. The desolate ancient zone. Chu Zan was quite curious about the desolate ancient zone. What kind of place was it? Previously, most of the divine realm experts in the Nine Zones had been exploring the desolate ancient zone. However, they had now left, which meant that something must have happened. Chu Zan's intuition told him that it was related to the end of the Daoyuan. Ding Yu and the others soon returned. "Master, we didn't fail you." The 5 fate treasures were placed in front of Chu Zan. The central region fate treasure was a small golden hammer that looked like a lotus flower that was about to bloom. The southern region fate treasure was a sword that was bathed in multicolored light. The northern region fate treasure was a simple 3-legged cauldron. The eastern region fate treasure was a mirror that was covered in white light. The western region fate treasure was a shield with runes engraved on it. The moment the 5 fate treasures left the Asura ancient land, they merged with the fate of the 5 regions. The fate of the northern zone had improved. Chu Zan could sense that the 5 fate treasures were connected to the fate of the northern zone. Your disciples have emerged victorious in the battle for the fate treasures. You have obtained the 5 regions' fate treasures. Your fate Dao principle will be upgraded. The system's reward notification arrived as expected. Chapter 254, Fusing Fate Treasures. Chu Zan looked at Ding Yu and the others and said, "Prepare to break through." Their cultivation levels had all reached the limit of the 9th level of the Emperor realm, and now that the battle for the fate treasures had come to an end, it was time for them to break through to the Supreme Realm. "Yes, Master." Ding Yu and the others entered the pocket dimension. 13th Uncle. Chu Pingfan stood in front of Chu Zan. Chu Zan rubbed his head and said, "If you want to develop in the eastern region, then go to the eastern region. The Chu family is not the right place for you to stay." Chu Yuan did not return to the Chu family's territory, which meant that he did not intend to stay here. At most, he would only visit himself and Chu Yun. Speaking of which, Chu Yuan was probably still confused as to how Chu Zan had become a peerless expert. Moreover, Chu Pingfan was on the verge of replacing Ling Beiyun as the fated son of the eastern region. There was naturally something that attracted him there. 13th Uncle, I will come back to see you often. Chu Pingfan smiled foolishly. Chu Zan nodded and said, "The extreme Dao is not an easy path to cultivate. You must remember that despite its name, the extreme Dao does not require you to live your life in that manner. The only extreme part of the extreme Dao should be your focus on the saber." The Sage Master's halo appeared and enveloped Chu Pingfan. Chu Zan once again explained the extreme Dao to him. The extreme Dao meant walking on an extreme path. However, it was precisely because of the word extreme that those whose mental state was not stable enough, or those who encountered setbacks, would easily overextend themselves and stray from the extreme path. Once things went to the extreme, it was equivalent to suicide. This was the invisible tribulation of the extreme Dao. Chu Pingfan's cultivation advancement was too fast, and he was young and full of vigor. If he encountered a setback and could not think things through clearly, he might stray from the correct path. Therefore, Chu Zan wanted to fortify his state of mind. Although Chu Pingfan looked simple-minded, he was not stupid. You are still young, and need to settle down. Don't be in a hurry to break through. There are thousands of geniuses in the world. You are not the only one. In this world, there is no one who will not lose. You must know that failure is not scary. What you should be afraid of is not being able to recover and stand back you. What you should be afraid of is losing your confidence. Chu Pingfan bowed and listened to Chu Zan's teachings, and allowed the latter's words to fortify his state of mind. Just like his appearance, his state of mind would be simple, dull, but stable. 13th uncle, I understand. It's good that you understand. Chu Zan nodded. Chu Pingfan then followed him into the pocket dimension. Chu Zan looked at the 5 fate treasures and took out the heavenly Tao talisman. He wanted to merge the 5 regions' fate treasures into the heavenly Tao talisman and transfer the fate of the northern zone to the heavenly Tao laws. Using the fate treasures as a guide, he would attract the fate of the northern zone to speed up the evolution of the heavenly Tao laws. Then, given time, he would use the heavenly Tao laws to encroach upon the laws of heaven and earth of the northern zone. The heavenly Tao talisman floated in front of him, and the Tao of fate revolved around the 5 fate treasures. Chu Zan then fused the fate treasures into the heavenly Tao talisman. These were the fate treasures of the 5 regions, so Chu Zan did not dare to be careless. After all, the Tao of fate was too mysterious. Even if he grasped the fate Tao principle, he still had not completely comprehended it. The fate-suppressing Tao cauldron floated over to the side, suppressing fate to prevent any accidents. The 5 fate treasures emanated brilliant light, and the heavenly Tao talisman's heavenly Tao laws were like a net, enveloping the fate treasures within. His fate Tao principle continuously pushed the fate treasures to fuse with the heavenly Tao laws, and the heavenly Tao talisman itself. Rather than fusing, it was more like the heavenly Tao talisman was devouring the fate treasures. This process would take some time. After all, this sort of fusion was not as simple as refining an artifact. Great Qin dynasty's royal palace. Qin Ying and the others had returned. The 9 Swords Mountain Sword Master and the other Divine Realm experts were also present. After hearing that the fate treasures had not been obtained by Qin Ying, they were all incredibly shocked. Just what faction was that? Qin Ying had some guesses. As the victors, they needed to discuss what they should do next. Should they destroy the Great Qian Palace? That was not realistic. The Great Qian Palace was not weak. They had only succeeded in the Asura ancient land thanks to that mysterious existence's restriction on cultivators above the Emperor realm. As for unifying the northern zone, that was not realistic at the moment either. The fate treasures had not fallen into their hands, and Qin Ying was not invincible. Furthermore, there were many neutral powers. Would they be willing to submit? The reason why they were biased toward Qin Ying was because they could not stand Cao Tianyi's actions back then. Of course, the unification of the southern region was inevitable. With Cao Tianyi's defeat, the Great Qian dynasty would no longer have any purpose in the southern region, and would lose the support of the Great Qian Palace as well. The moment the evil imperial court was controlled by the Great Evil Palace, it no longer existed either. The evil sun was still being pestered by the little evil king in the Asura ancient land, and with the battle for the fate treasures concluded, the Great Evil Palace would not continue to support the evil imperial court. The other forces were not strong. 9 Swords Mountain and the Floating Flower Pavilion belonged to Qin Ying's side. As for the Heavenly Cauldron Mountain, they were forced to leave the southern region after Dan Sangzi was killed. It was inevitable that the Great Qin dynasty would unify the southern region again. Qin Ying was not in a hurry to make a decision. He used the excuse that he needed time to recuperate to enter secluded cultivation. Xin Yuanfeng and the others were all recuperating. The 9 Swords Mountain Sword Master and the other Divine Realm experts were mainly guarding against Cao Tianyi and the other Divine Realm experts. At the same time, they invited Ren Chang to meet them. They were both curious and respectful towards the terrifying existence. As for Chu Yi, they did not dare to meet him, as the pressure was simply too great. Even though Ren Chang was powerful, his strength was still within the limits of their tolerance. One of the main reasons was that Chu Yi gave them the feeling that something was not quite right. It was as if he was not human and did not have any special characteristics. At that moment, Ren Chang was sitting opposite Qin Ying in a small courtyard within Great Qin's royal palace. "Should I call you senior brother?" Qin Ying asked. "My aptitude is poor, so I'm indebted to master for taking me in as an unnamed disciple." Ren Chang sighed. Were it not for the fact that he had met his master by chance and received his supreme cultivation technique, he would still be trapped in the fallen god cave, awaiting the day of his death. Then you are my senior brother. I am also untalented. Master accepted me as his in-name disciple. Qin Ying also sighed. May I know your name, senior brother? I am Ren Chang. Qin Ying's eyes widened as she said in surprise, Ren Chang, Chang's celestial master. Ren Chang smiled bitterly and said, that's me. Before I met Master, I also thought that my talent was outstanding. It was only after I met Master that I realized how lacking I am. Qin Ying sighed and said, the famous Chang Celestial Master is actually lacking. Who would believe it if it was spread out? Ren Chang was also filled with emotion. In Qin Ying's previous life, before the Great War, he had already heard of Ren Changhei's name. He was one of the top geniuses of the 9 zones. He had reached the heaven realm in 10,000 years. Of course, Qin Ying was also famous back then. In terms of strength, he was naturally much stronger than Ren Chang. After all, he was much older than Ren Chang. Before I entered the desolate ancient zone, I heard about what happened in the northern zone and southern region. I thought that the demon race had invaded the human race, so I made a trip to the demon zone. I didn't expect the twists and turns to be like this. Ren Chang sighed. Back then, very few people knew that he had invaded the demon zone. It was related to the invasion of the demon race into the southern region. Whether it was Qin Ying or Ren Chang, they both sighed at their luck to have met their master, Chu Zan. Chapter 255, 10 Million Buddhists. Chu Zan did not have time to bother with Ren Chang and Qin Ying. At this moment, he was completely focused on the heavenly Tao talisman's fusion with the 5 regions' fate treasures. Once the fate treasures were fused with the heavenly Tao talisman, then the heavenly Tao talisman would have the ability to control a portion of the 5 regions' fate. This would speed up the implementation of the heavenly Tao talisman plan in the northern zone. The southern region was just a starting point. It was like a drop of ink dripping into a basin of water. It would gradually spread and cover the entire basin. Of course, without the assistance of external forces or special methods, the heavenly Tao laws would take a long time to replace the northern zone's laws of heaven and earth and, later on, the entire 9 zones. Chu Zan did not have the patience to wait so long. Therefore, after the heavenly Tao laws encompassed the northern zone, he would think of a way to speed up the process of devouring the laws of the entire 9 zones. Fusing the fate treasures with the heavenly Tao talisman was a slow process. After all, he had to be careful not to trigger a fate backlash. Even with the fate-suppressing Tao cauldron, Chu Zan did not dare to be reckless. He had to take his time with the fusion process. Half a month passed. The heavenly Tao talisman had already fused with 2/3 of the fate treasures, and the southern region's laws of heaven and earth were being further devoured and replaced. During this half a month, the Great Qin dynasty began to take action. The Great Qian dynasty was disbanded. Long-standing southern region overlords vanished like smoke. The evil imperial court was also disbanded, and itinerant cultivators were scattered all over the southern region. The evil sun was still in the Asura ancient land, being pestered by the little evil king. The warriors of the various powers that had entered the southern region were still searching for treasures in the Asura ancient LND. Battles happened frequently, and they were also in danger. Among them, news of a strange plant in the Asura ancient land had already spread. No one dared to approach it. This strange plant was extremely terrifying, but fortunately, it did not have any intention of hurting anyone. The Great Qin dynasty was expanding and became the overlord of the southern region, inching ever closer to the unification of the southern region. Qin Qian was still the Great Qin Empress. The Chu family was still in Chu County, and no one came to disturb them. It was as if they were not part of the same world. Chu Tianming and the other elders of the Chu family were all confused. Why was the Chu family and Chu County independent? The Great Qin dynasty had no intention of reclaiming Chu County. Could it be that Qin Qian, the empress, was still thinking about Chu Yuan? Reminiscing about old times, the Chu family also knew about how things had concluded in the Asura ancient land. In fact, everyone in the southern region knew about it. They felt that the Chu family's situation was not quite right, but they did not know what exactly was wrong. Why was it that the forces that were stronger than the Chu family had already disbanded or perished, yet the Chu family remained standing in Chu County? There were also no experts who came to harass them. The Great Qin dynasty seemed to be unknowingly protecting Chu County. This was mind-boggling, but since they could not figure it out, they just decided to stop thinking about it. They would just continue to stay in Chu County. In any case, they had enough resources. The medicinal pills they refined brought the Chu family quite a bit of profit. If they did not have the strength, it was best not to leave Chu County, lest they cause trouble. For this reason, he even restricted the younger generation of the Chu family from leaving Chu County without permission. Another 10 days passed. Ren Cheng and Qin Ying were both a little anxious. Why did their master not send a message? On this day, the 5 regions' fate treasures were finally fused into the heavenly Tao talisman. With a rumble, half of the laws of heaven and earth in the southern region were replaced by the heavenly Tao laws. Chu Zan's control over the southern region had reached a new height. He was like a ruler. As long as he wanted to, he could sense every single plant and tree in the southern region, and even the state of any living being. He could even change the fate and talent of these living beings. Chu Zan tapped on the heavenly Tao talisman and placed it back beside the origin Tao crystal to allow it to continue its work. Once the southern region was fully under the control of the heavenly Tao laws, it would definitely trigger the system's reward. Chu Zan was looking forward to what the system would reward him with. Your disciple, Demon Buddha, is spreading Buddhist Dharma and transforming demons into Buddhists. The number of Buddhists has surpassed 10 million. You have been rewarded with the Myriad Races Atlas. The system's reward suddenly arrived. The number of Buddhists had surpassed 10 million. It had been a while since he had paid attention to Demon Buddha. He did not expect that despite the heavenly demon tribe's efforts to suppress and interfere with Buddhism, the spread of Buddhism and its Dharma would spread so quickly. Buddhists were not just believers of the Dharma, they were disciples who had truly joined the Buddhist sect. This meant that the Buddhist sect had 10 million disciples in the demon zone, and that the number of ordinary believers was even larger. Chu Zan took out the myriad heavenly mirror and connected it to Demon Buddha. The image projection shimmered. The smiling Demon Buddha was dressed in white monk robes and sitting upright on a large rock. Below him, there were numerous bald heads in sight. A group of monks dressed in monk robes clasped their palms together and sat down in the lotus position. Their eyes exuded piety and there was Buddhist light shining over their heads. On the left and right sides of Demon Buddha sat 4 long-browed old monks with kind expressions. They were all heaven realm experts. Demon Buddha was only at the 3rd level of the supreme realm. Did he subdue 4 heaven realm experts to join the Buddhist sect? Chu Zan took one glance at them and understood that the 4 heaven realm experts had reached the limit of their lifespans. Demon Buddha taught them Buddhist Dharma and converted their demonic powers into Buddhist power. Their bodies also transformed. Their lifespans actually increased greatly because of this. Hence, they converted to Buddhism and submitted to Demon Buddha, becoming devout Buddhists. In their belief, only Buddhism could save the demon race. Only by walking the path of Buddhism could they become immortal and enter the Nirvana world. Demon Buddha was preaching, and his smile was full of compassion. In Buddhism's Nirvana world, those who are mindful of the suffering of all living beings and wholeheartedly cultivate Buddhism will eventually reach Nirvana. What a guy, Chu Zan sighed. This Demon Buddha guy was truly born to spread Buddhism. Moreover, his level of talent in this area was really awesome. How long had it been? Even the Nirvana world had made its appearance. Even if a devout Buddhist fell, a wisp of his soul would return to the Nirvana world and become immortal. This temptation of immortality was too great. Why did people cultivate? Was the ultimate goal not to be immortal? Moreover, after converting to Buddhism, their lifespans increased greatly and there was no danger of dying. How could they not believe in Buddha? With 4 heaven realm experts as examples, how could the other demon race cultivators not believe? As Demon Buddha spoke, the Buddhist light around his body became more and more dazzling. Then sariras that were flickering with Buddhist light appeared in front of Demon Buddha. These are sariras. They were left behind by those who completed their Buddhist journeys. They are for the Buddhist disciples here to admire. What a guy, even sariras had made their appearance. Chu Zan was truly convinced. Demon Buddha was more like Buddha than he was. Chapter 256, The Great Daoyuan Calamity. The sariras were formed from the Buddhist power of Buddhist disciples after they died. To Buddhist cultivators, they were supreme treasures. Those who could form sariras had to have a deep understanding of Buddhist cultivation techniques, and their cultivation levels were not low. The larger sarira had been left behind by a heaven realm Buddhist disciple. The 5 smaller sariras had been left behind by supreme realm Buddhist disciples. It could be seen that the Buddhist sect of the demon zone had been embroiled in great conflict. Even a heaven realm Buddhist disciple had died. After these Buddhist disciples died, they actually left behind sariras. This undoubtedly proved what Demon Buddha had said. They seemed to be dead, but in fact, a wisp of their soul had already returned to the Nirvana world. As for the other fallen Buddhist disciples, why did they not leave behind any sariras? This was very easy to explain, it was because their Buddhist cultivation was lacking. Below the large rock, the crowd of bald men looked at the relics with devout expressions, and the Buddhist light around their bodies became even stronger. Chuzan had no doubt that these were a group of people who did not fear death. After all, dying meant returning to nirvana, which also meant that they were not dead. Thus, they were not afraid. Chuzan noticed that Demon Buddha was preaching in a valley. He figured that it was time to remind Demon Buddha to find a good place to build a temple. There were already tens of millions of Buddhist followers and disciples. They were already a large force, so how could they not have a temple? Chuzan had already prepared the blueprint of the temple for Demon Buddha. Those who were present here listening to Demon Buddha's preaching were those at the Emperor realm and above. Those below the Emperor realm were not qualified to meet him, the mighty Buddha. After Demon Buddha finished preaching, Chuzan took the time to speak with him. As usual, he clarified any doubts the latter had regarding his cultivation and encouraged him. He also passed the construction blueprint of the temple to him, including the arrangement of the array formations. The Heavenly Tao Talisman plan would involve the demon zone sooner or later, and Buddhism was an important part of it. For this reason, Chuzan provided some cultivation resources to Demon Buddha. When the Heavenly Tao laws covered the demon zone, it was not impossible for the Buddhists to return a wisp of their soul to nirvana after they died. After concluding his meeting with Demon Buddha, Chuzan was about to check the system's reward, but was suddenly distracted by a message from Hong Yuanchu in the Great Tao Communication Group. Taoist Brother Chu, what do you think of the Great Taoyuan Calamity? Great Taoyuan Calamity? Chuzan did not understand. Could it be that a great calamity would appear at the end of a Taoyuan? What would the Great Taoyuan Calamity bring? He had a bad premonition. Since a Taoyuan realm expert called it a great calamity, it was definitely terrifying. He had to accelerate the implementation of the Heavenly Tao Talisman plan so that he could stay safely inside his small courtyard. Moreover, would the Heavenly Tao Talisman plan be enough for him to avoid the Great Taoyuan Calamity? He had to subsume the southern region, and even the northern zone, under the Heavenly Tao laws before this calamity struck. Only then would Chuzan feel safe enough. He thought of his chaos indestructible body and the chaos bell, which could help him withstand the Tao tribulation. Could this Tao tribulation be related to the Great Taoyuan Calamity? Since he did not understand, Chuzan could only try to maintain his mysterious and aloof demeanor. The matter of opening a Smurf account should be put on the agenda. He had to figure out what the Great Taoyuan Calamity was. Thus, he replied to Hong Yuanchu, I'll just sit back and watch the Great Calamity pass by. He was full of himself. Hong Yuanchu could not help but sigh. That's true. The Great Taoyuan Calamity won't affect us, so there's no need to pay too much attention to it. Would the Great Taoyuan Calamity not affect Taoyuan realm cultivators? Are there any Taoyuan realm fellow Taoists who have entered the Great Calamity? Chuzan asked curiously. How could they enter the calamity so quickly? Only at the later stages of the Great Taoyuan Calamity, when the Great Tao's fate is further strengthened, and other factors, will there be Taoyuan realm cultivators who enter the calamity to fight for fate and treasures, and even pass down the orthodoxy for the next Taoyuan, Hong Yuanchu said. The Tao realm cultivators in the group were all staring at their screens. Most of them did not know what the Great Taoyuan Calamity was or what it meant. After all, they had never experienced it before. However, there were some Tao realm cultivators who had been around for a long time who knew the secrets of the Great Taoyuan Calamity. Since Taoyuan realm cultivators would not enter the Great Calamity so quickly, Chuzan was relieved. For the time being, no Taoyuan realm cultivators would pose a threat to him. Chuzan did not continue to ask. As a big shot and a mysterious existence, he was naturally supposed to have experienced the Great Taoyuan Calamity. If he continued to ask common sense questions about it, it would definitely affect the persona he was trying to portray. The Great Tao Communication Group was still lacking Taoyuan realm experts. He had to continue to explore and try to pull a few more in. At this moment, Mo Tu opened his mouth to speak. HMPH, the demon race will definitely rise up during this great calamity. The monster race did not have Taoyuan realm cultivators in the group, so Hu Tai was sullen and did not dare to come out to say that the monster race would rise up as well. However, he said weakly, I have a feeling that our heavenly tiger tribe will rise up soon. Hong Yuanchu laughed lightly and said, Old demon, the human race is strong and prosperous. We monopolize the fate of the 9 zones. This great calamity will still be dominated by the human race. I hope that your demon race will not be wiped out. What a joke. Our demon race has a long history and was once the overlord of the 9 zones. It suppressed your human race back then. We've only lost once. Now, we are still one of the 3 overlords of the 9 zones. We will definitely rise again in the great Daoyuan calamity. Our demon race will definitely regain our former glory. Mo2 said with a snort. In your dreams, our human race has many elites. How can your demon race compare to us? He also mocked Mo2. That might not be the case. I'm not afraid to tell you. I can sense that the fate of the demon zone is undergoing a transformation, and even I can't see through it. It must be related to the rise of the demon race. This great calamity will be an opportunity for the demon race to rise again. Mo2 was boasting. Chuzan glanced at the message, and his heart skipped a beat. This old fellow, Mo2, could actually sense the changes in the fate of the demon zone. Still, since Mo2 could not see through it, it meant that he did not know what was happening in the demon zone. Was the fate of the demon zone transforming? Yes, but it was nothing more than the rise of Buddhism. Demon Buddha was from the heavenly demon tribe, and was also one of the children of fate. Naturally, he carried the fate of the demon zone. Since he had converted to Buddhism, the fate of the demon zone and the fate of Buddhism was intertwined. Anyone looking from the outside would naturally think that the fate of the demon race was strong, and that it was undergoing a transformation. As long as Mo2 did not personally come to the demon zone, he would never figure out what was really going on. Chuzan was looking forward to Mo2's expression when he realized that the demon race was gone and had become a Buddhist race. The expressions of Hong Yuanchu and Kunhe changed slightly. The fate of the demon zone was changing. This was not a good thing for the human race. The human race has monopolized 5 zones. There's no way we will lose to the demon race. Even when your demon race was at its peak, it did not monopolize 5 zones. Hong Yuanchu laughed coldly. Just you wait. Our demon race will definitely rise up during this great Daoyuan calamity. The next Daoyuan, our demon race will be the overlord of the 9 zones. Demon Butcher was full of confidence. Chuzan was even more curious. What was the great Daoyuan calamity all about? The demon race was once the overlord of the 9 zones, suppressing the human race. Why did they end up being defeated in the end? Chuzan felt that he needed to create his Smurf account soon to inquire about the great Daoyuan calamity. Chapter 257, Celestials, Immortals, Demons, and Monsters. After glancing at the group chat for a while, Mo2 continued by provoking Ruoxian, claiming that he was going to strip her naked. Ruoxian was so angry that she started to quarrel with him. Chuzan was speechless. Mo2 was a troll, and not one of the good sort. Keep quarreling, keep quarreling. The Daoyuan realm cultivations arguing in the group chat was a good thing for the Origin Dao crystal. It would be able to absorb even more Dao aura this way. Furthermore, some Daoyuan realm insights would be infused into the Dao aura, which would help the Origin Dao crystal to perfect its great Dao. Chuzan examined the system reward. The Myriad Races Atlas records all the races that have existed in the history of the 9 zones, including the extinct races, their details, their influence, and so on. This reward had come at the right time. Chuzan was lacking in terms of his understanding of the various races. With the Myriad Races Atlas, he could gain an understanding of the races that had existed in the history of the 9 zones, including the extinct races. Chuzan was very curious. Did the Myriad Races Atlas really record the extinct races accurately? When he chose to receive the reward, a thick book appeared in his hand. Chuzan did not choose to have the knowledge instilled into his mind directly. Instead, he took it out and slowly flipped through it. He could use it to pass the time while he stayed in his courtyard. When he flipped open the Myriad Races Atlas, the first page was an introduction of the myriad races and a note from which point in time the myriad races in the 9 zones would be counted. The Myriad Races Atlas records the various races that exist or have existed in the 9 regions from the end of the last Great Dao era to this Great Dao era. There was also a line of small words explaining the Great Dao era. 9 Daoyuans represent one Great Dao era. Each Great Dao era exists for an unfixed period of time. Every 9 Great Daoyuan calamities will usher in a Great Dao calamity. Once the Great Dao calamity ends, the next Great Dao era. Looking at the note on the atlas of the 10,000 races, Chuzan was shocked. He felt that he had learned some secrets of the Great Dao. Every 9 Daoyuans was a Great Dao era. What if there were 9 Great Dao eras? That was too far away. The duration of a single Great Tao era was already very long. What caught Chu Xuan's attention the most was that every 9 Great Taoyuan calamities would usher in a Great Tao calamity. This represented the end of this Great Tao era and the beginning of the next Great Tao era. Did it mean that the Great Tao would restart and regenerate all living things after a Great Tao era? Chu Xuan suddenly understood. The chaos indestructible body and the chaos bell referred to the Great Tao calamity. In that case, he only needed to work hard to increase his strength and did not need to worry about the Great Tao calamity, right? Chu Xuan continued to flip through the pages. The page after that displayed an extraordinary figure who exuded a sacred and mighty aura. The celestial race rose up during the third Great Tao era. After going through many ups and downs, they became known for their strength and were revered by all living beings. At the end of the 8th Great Tao era, they disappeared from the 9 zones. The celestial race. From the introduction of the celestial race, Chu Xuan deduced which Great Tao era he was in. The myriad races atlas started from the end of the last Great Tao era. The celestial race disappeared at the end of the 8th Great Tao era. Was that not the last Great Tao era? So, it was now the 9th Great Tao era. What great calamity would descend at the end of the 9th Great Tao eras? With this thought in mind, Chu Xuan's heart tightened. He seemed to have uncovered an incredible secret. If this Great Taoyuan calamity also happened to be the 9th Great Taoyuan calamity, would that not mean that after the Great Taoyuan calamity, they would not be entering the next Taoyuan, nor the next Great Tao era, but something even greater? Thinking this, Chu Xuan felt his scalp go numb. He calmed his mind. Although the end of this Taoyuan was approaching, as well as the end of the 9th Great Tao era, there was still a long time before the Great Taoyuan calamity would arrive. Moreover, he did not yet know if this would be the 9th Taoyuan calamity. Therefore, he still had enough time to become stronger. He would be able to overcome these calamities. Chu Xuan was even more determined to carry out the Heavenly Tao Talisman plan. Perhaps he would be able to handle the calamities once the 9 zones were covered by the Heavenly Tao laws. To do this, the Origin Tao crystal needed to be upgraded as soon as possible. Chu Xuan speculated that Hong Yuanshu and the others did not know about the Great Tao calamity. According to his speculation, the 2 Taoyuan realm experts that Hong Yuanshu had invited were also considered juniors. However, he did not know where Taoyuan realm cultivators cultivated. There had to be quite a number of Taoyuan realm cultivators since the beginning of the Great Tao era. Where were they hiding? Chu Xuan continued to flip through the pages. On the second page, there was an otherworldly figure exuding an immortal and untouchable aura. The immortal race rose up during the third Great Tao era. Despite experiencing challenges, they remained exalted and mighty. They were revered and yearned for by all living creatures. At the end of the 8th Great Tao era, they disappeared from the 9 zones. On the third page, there was a ferocious and terrifying figure filled with bloodthirsty aura. The demon race rose up during the third Great Tao era. They went through many battles, but were never destroyed. They were feared by all living creatures. The pure-blooded demon race disappeared from the 9 zones at the end of the 8th Great Tao era. There are some non-pure-blooded demons who are active in the 9th Great Tao era. After looking at the celestial, immortal, and demon races, Chu Xuan found a common point. These 3 races rose up during the third Great Tao era and also disappeared at the end of the 8th Great Tao era. Only the demon race had left behind non-pure-blooded descendants, which was the current demon race. The introductions also confirmed that they were currently in the 9th Great Tao era. At the same time, Chu Xuan also noticed a key piece of information. All 3 clans had only disappeared from the 9 zones and were not completely destroyed. Did this mean that the 3 races existed somewhere outside the 9 zones? Was there a world beyond the 9 zones? Chu Xuan was extremely puzzled. From the rise of the 3 races during the third Great Tao era to their disappearance at the end of the 8th Great Tao era, these 3 races had always been incomparably powerful. They were revered or feared by all living beings. So these 3 races had dominated the third Great Tao era to the 8th Great Tao era. Why would such powerful 3 races disappear during the 8th Great Tao era? Was the 8th Great Tao calamity so terrifying that even the 3 races, who had gone through several Great Tao calamities, were unable to withstand it? Did the Great Tao calamity get stronger each time? Would the 9th Great Tao calamity be even more terrifying? Chu Xuan flipped to the 4th page. The monster race was active during the third Great Tao era. There were many types of monster tribes. There were also overlord tribes among them such as dragons, phoenixes, and qilin. These overlord tribes disappeared in the 9 zones at the end of the 8th Great Tao era, leaving behind the remaining monster tribes that continued to stay active in the 9 zones. There was also other information on the monster tribe classifications. The fourth page was about the monster race. To Chuzon's surprise, there were records of the legendary divine beasts such as the dragons, phoenixes, and qilins. One had to know that there were no legends about dragons, phoenixes, and qilins in the 9 zones. Apparently, this was because they had disappeared at the end of the 8th Great Tao era. The current monster race only comprised remnants of the past monster race. Chuzon became more and more curious. What exactly had happened during the 8th Great Tao era that so many powerful races disappeared? He continued to flip to the 5th page. When he saw what was on the 5th page, Chuzon was stunned. The race recorded on the 5th page was beyond his expectations. Chapter 258, Shuai Potion. The 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th pages of the Myriad Races Atlas introduced the Celestial, Immortal, Demon, and Mortal races respectively. Moreover, the 4 races had something in common. They had all risen during the 3rd Great Tao era, and had all disappeared from the 9 zones at the end of the 8th Great Tao era. The Celestial and Immortal races had completely disappeared. The Demon race had left behind mixed blood descendants that were still active in the 9 zones. The Monster race's overlord tribes had disappeared from the 9 zones, but still had many other tribes that were still active in the 9 regions. From the information contained within the introductions, the 4 races were all very powerful, though from the introduction, it seemed that the Immortal race had the advantage. Despite experiencing challenges, they remained exalted and mighty. This line of text in the introduction indicated that, although the Immortal race had encountered challenges, they had always been exalted and mighty and had not suffered a major setback. Compared to the ups and downs of the Celestial race, the status of the Immortals was much more stable. Moreover, aside from being revered, they were also yearned for. They went through many battles, but were never destroyed. The demons were obviously good at fighting, though they seemed to be slightly weaker than the Immortals and Celestials. No matter what, the Immortals, Celestials, demons, and monsters were all incomparably powerful and had experienced several Great Tao eras. Chuzon estimated that, since the Celestials appeared on the 1st page, they should have risen before the other 3 races. However, the race described on the 5th page had exceeded Chuzon's expectations. The human race appeared during the middle of the 3rd Great Tao era. They were at the bottom of the hierarchy. They suffered the oppression of the myriad, but were tenacious and indestructible. They rose to prominence at the end of the 8th Daoyuan, and are still active in the 9 zones since the beginning of the 9th Great Tao era. They became the overlord of the 9 zones at the end of the 7th Daoyuan, and then monopolized 5 zones. The race on the 5th page was actually the human race. They had appeared a little later than the other 4 races, and their status was low. Thanks to that, they had always suffered oppression. However, they rose to prominence at the end of the 8th Great Tao era and are active in the 9 zones during the current Great Tao era. At the end of the 7th Daoyuan, they became the overlord of the 9 zones. Currently, the human race was the strongest in the 9 zones. They monopolized 5 zones. The rise of the human race at the end of the 7th Daoyuan meant that they had emerged victorious during the 7th Great Daoyuan calamity. That period of time seemed to coincide with the rise of the Hong Yuanshu. He was the great ancestor of the human race, and one of the human experts who had led the human race to the peak. He had been cultivating for 2 Daoyuan now. Therefore, it should be the 9th Daoyuan now. Chuzon's heart tightened after he finished his calculations. This Great Daoyuan calamity was the 9th Great Daoyuan calamity. After the 9th Daoyuan, there would be a Great Tao calamity. He had to increase his strength as soon as possible. He also had to understand how the Great Daoyuan calamity was triggered and what it entailed. Chuzon continued reading and saw the introduction of the mixed blood demon race, as well as the Netherworld race. The Netherworld race rose to prominence during the 5th Daoyuan. They often possessed humans and controlled their bodies. At the end of the 7th Daoyuan, they were defeated by humans. Their fate declined and they hid themselves in the 9 zones. Now, they are on the way to extinction. Chuzon was a little surprised. The Myriad Races Atlas records of the Netherworld race, some of which had been converted to the ghosts, stated that the Netherworld race was on its way to extinction. That was accurate. Chuzon wanted to convert the entire Netherworld race into ghosts. When that happened, would the Netherworld race not be extinct? Chuzon also wanted the Tao realm ancestor of the Netherworld race, Yusu, to become a ghost. Chuzon looked up the Earth Spirit race. As expected, the ancestor of the Earth Spirit race was a spirit of the Earth vein, and he had created the unique Earth Spirit race. Moreover, the Earth spirit race always liked to associate themselves with human geniuses, and they relied on each other. Currently, the Earth spirit race was in decline. Chuzan closed the myriad races atlas and turned his attention to the Great Tao communication group. Motu and Ruoxian were still quarreling intermittently. Motu was already becoming complacent, believing that the demon race would definitely rise up. It was time to get a Smurf account in. The Great Daoyuan calamity was of great importance, so he had to fully understand it and prepare for it. It was time for his Smurf account, Shuai Potion, to appear. As the group leader, he should have his own special function in the Great Tao communication group, such as private chat, right? There were some things that were not suitable for chatting in the group. After all, there were many Tao realm cultivators in the group. There was no need for them to know the secret of the Great Tao calamity. Chuzan decided to find an opportunity to chat privately with Huanglong and ask if he knew anything about the Great Tao calamity. If Huanglong was born in this Great Tao era and had never experienced the Great Tao calamity, then he would not know about the Great Tao calamity either. Everyone, let's welcome our little friend Shuai Potion. Chuzan sent a message to the group and pulled his alt account in. The group fell silent. Shuai Potion, how handsome was he? TN. Shuai means handsome. This Great Tao communication group is quite interesting. There are even Daoyuan realm experts here. Chuzan sent a message using his Smurf. Ying Kong was the first to jump out to welcome him. In any case, he was the weakest in the group, so he was very active. There might be a chance for him to get some benefits. Welcome, fellow Taoist Shuai Potion. Thank you, thank you. Let me introduce myself first. Chuzan began to paint the picture of his Smurf account's background. He was a junior from a super powerful family. He was not particularly strong, and had only reached the 6th level of the Tao realm. He was definitely a little older, about 3,000 years old. A 3,000-year-old cultivator at the 6th level of the Tao realm would frighten people, right? Even the Daoyuan realm experts would be shocked, right? Chuzan muttered in his heart. Was a 3,000-year-old Tao realm cultivator not a little too monstrous? However, on second thought, he himself was far from reaching 100 years old, yet he was already at the 2nd level of the Tao realm. His Smurf account paled in comparison. With that thought in mind, Chuzan confirmed his persona and background and began to introduce himself in the group chat. My name is Shuai Potion. I'm already 3,000 years old. My cultivation has reached the 6th level of the Tao realm. My aptitude isn't too bad, right? It's just that the old fellow in my family isn't too satisfied. Sigh. Shuai Potion was a pure and innocent little newbie who had never left his house before. The Great Tao communication group went completely silent. Everyone was doubting life. A 3,000-year-old cultivator at the 6th level of the Tao realm. His aptitude was not bad. Then what did that make them? Worse than trash. Shuai Potion, you brat. You're saying that you are only 3,000 years old. Don't brag. If you dare to lie to your grandpa Motu, the consequences will be severe. Motu was the first to voice his doubts. I'm really only 3,000 years old. It was pretty difficult for me to cultivate to the Tao realm, okay. My father and the others all reached the Tao realm in 1,000 years. My aptitude is lacking compared to theirs. A look of bewilderment appeared on their faces. The group fell silent once more. 1,000 years to break through to the Tao realm. Were they all freaks of nature? Hong Yuanchu realized that something was not quite right. Was Shuai Potion's family not too terrifying? When had there ever been such a family in the 9 zones? Chapter 259, Desolate Ancient Primordial Land. My young friend Shuai Potion, there is no family like yours in the 9 zones. It's not good to lie to the group, Hong Yuanchu said. They all thought that this guy, Shuai Potion, was bragging. I didn't say that I'm from the 9 zones. The group fell silent once again. Hong Yuanchu and the other Daoyuan realm experts were shocked. Not from the 9 zones. Could it be that there was a world beyond the 9 zones? Impossible. Beneath the Great Tao, there was only the world of the 9 zones. Although the Tao realm and above experts did not enter the 9 zones, they had not left the boundaries of the 9 zones either. They only resided in a place closer to the Great Tao. All of the Tao realm cultivators in the group fell silent. This guy was a bit awesome. He had evoked the interest of the Daoyuan realm experts. Is there another world beyond the 9 zones? Ruoxian could not help but ask. You didn't know? Shuai Potion had a look of surprise on his face. Then, he seemed to remember something and said, oh, that's right. You shouldn't know. Then, he asked excitedly, "Tell me quickly, what are the 9 zones like? I'm very interested in the 9 zones. It's just that the old thing at home won't let me go out until I break through to the Daoyuan realm. It's very depressing." Everyone in the group felt their hearts tremble. What kind of incredible secret had they discovered? Was there another world beyond the 9 zones? Was there such a powerful family? "Your entire family has reached the Daoyuan realm?" Motu swallowed his saliva and asked. "That's right. Apart from me, everyone has reached the Daoyuan realm. I'm the youngest after all." Following that, the members of the group began to ask questions one after another. They were really curious about the world beyond the 9 zones. However, they still maintained their suspicions. This was especially true for the few Daoyuan realm experts. They were not weaklings. They were existences that could walk the great Tao. If there was another world outside the 9 zones, how could they not know? It was not until Huang Long spoke up that they dispelled their doubts. There might really be a world beyond the 9 zones. A long time ago, I met a person on the Great Tao who had an extraordinary temperament. He said that he did not come from the 9 zones and that he would not enter the 9 zones. Hong Yuanchu and the others were shocked. There really was another world beyond the 9 zones. Then, unbelievably, what Shuai Potion said was true. His family was terrifyingly powerful. Huang Long's words undoubtedly confirmed Chuzan's guess. There was another world beyond the 9 zones, and the celestial, immortal, and demon races existed there. The person Huang Long met had an extraordinary temperament. He should be an immortal race expert without a doubt. However, why did he not enter the 9 zones? Chuzan guessed that those races were most likely expelled from the 9 zones by the Great Tao. That was the only reason why they were not allowed to enter the 9 zones. Perhaps when they entered the 9 zones, they would be expelled by the Great Tao, or they might even experience a Great Tao calamity. Now that it was confirmed that Shuai Potion was not lying, all of them, including the Daoyuan realm experts, discarded their identities as big shots and began to communicate with Shuai Potion to listen to what he knew about the world beyond the 9 zones. Chuzan began to bluff them. Of course, he could not do so blindly. He only spoke vaguely. When asked about specific things, he would use the excuse of not leaking them out, or not leaking them out before the time was right, to avoid answering. At the same time, he also began to ask about the 9 zones. His persona was that he was not familiar with the 9 zones. As for how he knew about the existence of the 9 zones, Chuzan lied and said that the family's ancestors came from the 9 zones, so there were records. When Hong Yuanchu and the others asked about how to leave the 9 zones, Chuzan said he did not know. However, he could find an opportunity to help them ask the elders and so on. After some bluffing, Chuzan finally learned a lot of secrets about the 9 zones from these Daoyuan and Dao realm cultivators. This included where they were residing and why they did not enter the 9 zones. First of all Dao realm warriors existed in the core area of the desolate ancient zone. It was rumored to be the origin of the 9 zones, which was why it was also known as the desolate ancient primordial land. The desolate ancient primordial land was enveloped by a mysterious energy barrier, and only Dao realm experts could enter. That was the place closest to the great Tao in the 9 zones. Cultivating in the desolate ancient primordial land allowed one to comprehend the great Tao from a closer distance. Only the desolate ancient primordial land had treasures that were suitable for Tao realm cultivation. It was not that the 9 zones did not have such treasures, just that they were too rare. Moreover, in terms of quality, they could not compare to the desolate ancient primordial land. The desolate ancient land was the largest zone among the 9 zones. It contained many secrets of heaven and earth. Usually, only divine realm cultivators were active in the desolate ancient zone in search of supreme treasures. Anyone who broke through to the divine realm would come to the desolate ancient zone. It was almost like some kind of intuition. Chuzan felt that it had to be because of the laws of heaven and earth in the 9 zones. The desolate ancient zone was the largest zone, contained many secrets, and was rumored to be where the origin of heaven and earth was in the 9 zones. Even Daoyuan realm experts did not dare to say that they had a complete understanding of the desolate ancient zone. Dao realm experts would not easily leave the desolate ancient primordial land. The reason for that was that, after entering the desolate ancient primordial land, they would be able to comprehend the great Tao from a close distance. Their bodies and souls would be purified, and there was an abundance of Tao ore there. If they entered the 9 zones, they would be contaminated by the turbid spiritual energy of the 9 zones. In the worst-case scenario, they would not be able to enter the desolate ancient primordial land through the mysterious energy barrier again. After returning to the desolate ancient primordial land, they would be repelled by the great Tao. They would need to spend a large amount of time in Tao aura to wash away the turbid spiritual energy contamination. Chuzan came to a sudden realization. It was no wonder then that there were no Tao realm experts in the 9 zones. So this was the reason. Presumably, after breaking through to the Tao realm, one would be influenced by their intuition and would unconsciously head to the desolate ancient primordial land. This was definitely a restriction of the great Tao, and it was also an order of the laws of heaven and earth in the 9 zones. It prevented Tao realm experts from entering the 9 zones and causing great damage. Chuzan felt that the reason why he was immune to it probably had something to do with the system. As long as Tao realm experts did not enter the 9 zones, Chuzan would be at ease. He could slowly develop. When the laws of heaven and earth of the 9 zones became the heavenly Tao laws, he would not be afraid of any Tao realm experts who entered the 9 zones. However, although it was normal for Tao realm experts not to enter the 9 zones, according to Hong Yuanshu, when the great Tao Yuan calamity developed to a certain extent, Tao realm experts could enter the 9 zones. Hong Yuanshu had experienced the great Tao Yuan calamity, so he naturally knew what the great Tao Yuan calamity meant. According to him, when the great Tao Yuan calamity arose, the will of the great Tao would pour into the 9 zones. Fated ones would use their luck to rise up and break through the shackles of their cultivation. Whoever managed to obtain fate would be favored by the great Tao, and would definitely become a peerless expert. They would even become legends of the next Tao Yuan, leaving behind their legacy. Hong Yuanshu rose up at the end of the 7th Tao Yuan and fought for fate. He succeeded in opening his Tao path and led the human race to rise up in the 8th Tao Yuan, becoming the overlord of the 9 zones. The great Tao Yuan calamity was both a disaster and an opportunity. According to Hong Yuanshu's experience, in the later stages of the great Tao Yuan calamity, there would be a chance to fight for fate, and great Tao treasures would lure Tao realm experts into the calamity. Usually, the ones who entered the calamity were experts below the 16th level of the Tao realm. When cultivators above the 16th level of the Tao realm entered the calamity, they would encounter even greater danger. The slightest bit of carelessness could easily give rise to a Tao heart calamity, and they would be repelled and eliminated by the great Tao. Hong Yuanshu mentioned a good friend who was a 26th level Tao realm cultivator as an example. That friend was drawn into the last great Tao Yuan calamity and, in the end, he died and his Tao disappeared. Chapter 260, Bearers of the Calamity. After listening to Hong Yuanshu's explanation of the great Tao Yuan calamity, Chuzan felt that the great Tao Yuan calamity might be one of the ways the great Tao created balance. After the destruction of all living things, new life forms would be reborn from the ashes. These life forms would not continue to grow and eventually surpass the great Tao. It was probably why it lured Tao realm cultivators into calamity as well. After discovering this, Chuzan decided to strive for great fortune. Therefore, it was time for his disciples to make preparations for the great Tao Yuan calamity. These fated children might be destined to enter the great Tao Yuan calamity. Every time there was a great Tao Yuan calamity, a new race would suddenly rise up. Some of them would falter in the middle of their rise, while others would fight for a wisp of fate and become active in the 9 zones. The ghost race should rise up during this great Tao Yuan calamity. If things went according to plan, the ghost race would become a powerful race during the next Tao Yuan. There was even a chance that all living beings would turn into ghosts after they died. However, this great Tao Yuan calamity was the 9th great Tao Yuan calamity. It was likely that it would not herald the beginning of a new Tao Yuan, but would welcome a great Tao calamity instead. No matter what, Chuzan wanted to reap the benefits of his disciples fighting for great fortune in the calamity. For this the heavenly Tao talisman plan was too important. This was one of the key methods he had to overcome the great Tao calamity. Honestly, Chuzan was not too worried about the great Tao Yuan calamity. What truly gave him a sense of danger was the great Tao calamity after the great Tao Yuan calamity. The great Tao calamity was the true danger. The Tao realm cultivators resided in the desolate ancient primordial land, but the Tao Yuan realm experts did not. Other than Xu Yang and a few Tao realm cultivators who had Tao Yuan realm masters, the rest of the Tao realm cultivators did not know where the Tao Yuan realm experts resided. Hong Yuanshu hoped to find out how to leave the 9 zones, and thus in order to curry favor with Chuzan's Smurf, Shuai Potion, he revealed the secret of the Tao Yuan experts' residence. The Tao Yuan realm experts still resided in the 9 zones, above the desolate ancient primordial land, in an empty space separated by another barrier. Those was the place closest to the great Tao. Each Daoyuan expert established their own Taoist hall in this empty space. They stayed here for a long time, constantly comprehending the Great Tao, their Tao paths, and walking on the Great Tao. The Daoyuan realm experts were even less likely to enter the 9 zones. If they were tainted by the turbid spiritual energy, the backlash they would suffer from the Great Tao would be even more severe. Furthermore, the Great Daoyuan calamity would not affect Daoyuan realm experts anyway. Chuzan came to a sudden realization. It was no wonder the demon race had been defeated by humans back then. It turned out that their Daoyuan realm experts could not interfere. This also meant that no matter how many Daoyuan realm experts there were, it was useless. If they forcefully interfered, they would probably be punished by the Great Tao. The Great Tao placed many restrictions on Daoyuan and Tao realm experts. Chuzan felt that the waters of the Great Tao ran deep, and there were too many secrets behind it. What Hong Yuanchu knew was probably only the tip of the iceberg. After all, he did not even know about the Great Tao calamity, which meant that there were obvious gaps in his knowledge of the Great Tao. The Great Tao calamity would also affect Daoyuan realm experts. Chuzan felt that only those who truly transcended the Great Tao could ignore the Great Tao calamity. Therefore, the path he walked was to strive for, and establish, his own Great Tao. The Smurf account, Shuai Potion, was active in the group chat, while Chuzan went looking for Huanglong for a private chat. Fellow Taoist Huanglong, have you ever experienced the Great Tao calamity? He did not beat around the bush and directly ask the question. Huanglong was very surprised and asked, Fellow Taoist Chu, what is the Great Tao calamity? Hearing Huanglong's reply, Chuzan now knew that Huanglong was born in the 9th Great Tao era, so he was unaware of the existence of the Great Tao calamity. The Great Tao calamity is after the Great Daoyuan calamity. It won't be too long now, Chuzan sighed and explained. It shouldn't affect me, right? Huanglong asked somewhat unconfidently. The Great Tao calamity sounded very terrifying. Huanglong was a creature of the Great Tao, so Chuzan did not know whether he would be affected or not, so he had no way to answer. He just asked Huanglong to pay more attention to the changes in the Great Tao and to inform him when there were any abnormalities. Chuzan was sure that before the Great Tao calamity appeared, there would definitely be some abnormalities in the Great Tao. As a creature of the Great Tao, the Dragon Lord would naturally be very sensitive to such abnormalities. After concluding his private chat with Huanglong, Chuzan took out the Chaos Tao Mirror. The Chaos Tao Mirror was not only able to search for Tao realm and above warriors, but also had the ability to deduce information. He wanted to deduce when the Great Daoyuan calamity would appear. For some reason, Divine Realm cultivators had suddenly left the desolate ancient zone, which was probably one of the signs that the calamity was about to appear. As for the Great Tao calamity, Chuzan was afraid that his current cultivation level was insufficient to deduce any information about the Great Tao calamity. He extended his hand and tapped on the Chaos Tao Mirror. Some images appeared on the mirror, and it was covered in blood. Chuzan saw that on a dilapidated battlefield, there was a huge blood-colored lake. It was formed from the blood of countless fallen cultivators. This blood lake was much larger than the one in the Asura ancient land, but looked eerily similar nonetheless. Since the beginning of the 9th Daoyuan, countless battles had taken place. Countless lives had been lost. If they were all gathered into this blood lake, how terrifying would that be? To be more precise, this was not a blood lake, but a blood sea. The dilapidated battlefield displayed in the Chaos Tao Mirror was undoubtedly a place where the 9 zones had once fought. No one knew which spatial dimension it had fallen into. The blood sea in the picture surged violently. Then, one creature after another walked out of the blood sea. They had warts on their foreheads, ugly facial features, and an aura of bloodlust. The blood sea kept giving birth to more and more of them. The resentment of the 9th Daoyuan. They originated from the 9th Great Daoyuan calamity and are born from the blood sea. Those who possess bloodlust will not die. They are the bearers of the calamity, the blood fiend race. Information appeared on the Chaos Tao Mirror, which then disappeared. That was as much information as Chuzan's current cultivation allowed him to deduce. Chuzan's expression changed. The blood fiends. The blood fiends were born from the calamity and the blood sea. They bearers of the calamity who could be resurrected on the battlefield. Terrifying. There would never be a shortage of blood fiends on the battlefield. Could it be that they could not be killed? As expected of the 9th Daoyuan calamity, it had given birth to such a terrifying race. However, he did not know where the battlefield was. Hopefully, it was not in the northern zone. Chuzan felt a sense of crisis and urgency. After replenishing his spiritual power, he once again used the Chaos Dao mirror, this time trying to deduce the location of the battlefield. It's not just in the northern zone, but the entire 9 zones. The blood fiends were spread throughout the 9 zones. This also meant that there was more than one such ancient battlefield, and that one would eventually appear in the northern zone.